Welcome, everybody. My name is Dilip Barman, and I welcome you to our next show of So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. I'm a Food for Life instructor, and so are all the other presenters today. Food for Life is a nutrition education program of the Physicians Committee. We are interested in getting information out there about how easy it is to cook fully plant-based with limited fat and all of the evidence that points to all of the great implications. If you're healthy, we want you to stay healthy. If you're not so healthy, we have programs, we have classes, we have a cancer class, we have a heart disease class, we have a class for athletes, we have a diabetes class. So we have strong evidence that by eating this way, whole food, plant-based with limited fat, you can maintain your health. And if we have some health issues, we can potentially manage them and maybe reverse them. So this is our fourth show. We've been doing these about every month. And we have instructors today from Italy all the way to the Pacific Northwest. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend 7-8 minutes each and share with you something about grains. And that's what today's show is, whole grains. We encourage people to eat from the power plate. And our first show was about legumes or beans. And then we moved on to vegetables. Last month, we had a show on fruits. And today we're talking about whole grains. You might say, so what next? We thought it would be fun to go around the power plate. As you could imagine, we all know something about nutrition and we are passionate about food. It seems like our group of, today we have about a dozen, but there's about 20 or more of us. We have essentially an infinite number of ideas. And I'm happy to announce that next month we're going to be talking about tofu. Don't worry, if you're one of those people, tofu is a very healthy food. There are a small number of people, like my wife behind the camera, who can't eat tofu. She isn't able to digest tofu. Down the road, we're going to have a show about soy-free cooking. So we have lots of ideas, so stay tuned. Grains, whole grains. Whole grains are also called cereals, and they're a staple in the diet of a lot of the world. They're the small, hard, dry seeds on grass-like plants. You know them, things like wheat, rice, barley, and oats. Corn is a grain also, but it's culinarily treated usually more like a starchy vegetable. Grains are great for B. They're strong in B vitamins. They're great with E, vitamin E, and with various minerals. You will see if you're watching this live, we have posted a link to all the recipes. And if you're not watching it live, you should also have access to all the recipes. I wanted to have a shout out to my good friend Brenda Davis. She put together a very nice 3-page appendix to our recipes that goes into lots of details on grains. We recommend eating less processed grains and more intact whole grains. For example, did you know if you take whole wheat, you harvest wheat, and then you mill it, you convert it into white flour, you lose more than 80% of the fiber and more than 70% of the vitamins and minerals. The phytochemicals also drop. So as much as possible, we want to encourage folks to eat whole grains. I'll tell you a story. When I was in college, I used to eat white rice. And I think it was in college I was exposed to brown rice. And I didn't like it initially. I ate it again because I probably bought a bag of it. And I said, I have to eat this up. Ate it again. You know, I didn't like it much. But by the third time, I started liking it. And to tell the truth, I much prefer brown rice from a flavor and obviously from a health point of view. Now, here's my theory. And I might be wrong. My theory is this. A lot of the world's cultures depend on rice. Now, rice, after it's harvested, grows rancid unless you refrigerate it. In a lot of countries, a lot of civilizations, they didn't have refrigeration. So my theory is this. When people would harvest rice, they would have a wonderful rice harvest and enjoy the brown rice. And then they'd mill the rice and remove the husk, the bran, and the germ, all the good stuff, because it would last. White rice can last for a long time. And so if you have a choice, if that's your food source and you don't have a way to refrigerate it, that would make sense. So that's my theory, okay? Now, some of you might say, I've heard about gluten intolerance, and you're right. There's a small percentage of people, we think it's about 6 to 10%, who need to be gluten-free because your healthcare provider has told you so. Maybe you have celiac disease. No problem. There's a lot of grains that are gluten-free. Quinoa is one example, which I'll be talking about today. Quinoa can be made into a flour. So if you're used to having food, breads, baked goods, you can use various flours that don't come from wheat if you can't enjoy wheat. So today we're going to be hearing from about a dozen of us, including folks covering corn, oats, farro, bulgur, buckwheat, freekeh, rices, including wild rice, sorghum, And I'm going to be talking about quinoa, and I think I missed one or two, so we have a good program for you today. So let's move on to quinoa. Quinoa is actually a seed. It's not a grain, but it's treated like a grain. And here's some quinoa. You can see it here. Quinoa is available in the bulk bin. You can buy it bagged. So here's some quinoa. And here's some more quinoa. I don't know if you can see it. This quinoa is really interesting because this has different kinds of quinoa. Quinoa is often yellowish in color, but you can also get black or what's called Inca red, different kinds of quinoa. Quinoa was a staple in the diet of the ancient South Americans. And it was a staple for the Incas in the West Andes Mountains from at least 3000 BC for an awfully long time. It's one of the few perfect foods. We need, as humans, 20 amino acids, and we make our proteins from amino acids. Now, we can make all of the amino acids except for 9. We have to consume 9 of them. Those are called 9 essential amino acids, and quinoa has all 9 of those amino acids. Quinoa is easy to digest, and it's very versatile. It's super easy to cook with. The first step with quinoa is you want to rinse it. So what you do is you take the quinoa, you put it through a fine sieve, and you run water through it. Quinoa is covered with this bitter coating called saponin. Saponin is kind of a soapy feel, and I've read that the ancients would use it as a soap. The saponin is there to help protect the seed from insects. Now, to tell you the truth, the kind of quinoa I've been buying doesn't tend to have problems with this saponin, so I don't do that. So optionally, you can go ahead and rinse the quinoa. I generally don't. The quinoa I buy doesn't seem to need it. The basic recipe for quinoa is easy. Quinoa expands in size 4 times. So if you use a cup of quinoa and then you add the water, you put twice as much water as quinoa, then you'll get 4 cups of quinoa. So I'm going to make, the simple recipe is 1 part quinoa, 2 parts water or vegetable broth, and a pinch of salt. Cook it for 10 minutes and watch it. You don't have to cover it, and then you'll find that it's done, and it'll develop a characteristic spiral. The other way to cook it that I prefer is just cook it for 2 or 3 minutes, and then turn the heat off, cover it, and let it sit. Give it 10, 15 minutes if you want longer, and it will be done. Okay? So today I'm going to be making a recipe I just made up last week. I was really pleased with it. I made it up a couple days ago, and this is my warm quinoa bowl. So I have some water, and you can put everything in at once. I just turned the heat on. So I have 2 cups of water. I'm going to add a cup of quinoa, which goes in. And then I'm going to add a cup of carrot, cut into about 1/2-inch pieces. I'm going to add also a cup of vegetables. Broccoli is a great choice. This happens to be frozen. It doesn't matter if it's frozen or fresh. So there goes the broccoli. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of onion, and change these to your own taste. If you're a real onion person, add a little bit more, and that's cut to 1/2-inch. And I also have some apricots, 5 to 6 apricots. I quartered them, so they go into. Here's my second bowl. I was looking for another bowl. They were stacked. And finally, I'm going to use some kale. And what I like to do with kale is I like to hand tear it. So you don't need a knife or anything, just hand tear it. You don't want the stem. I'm going to cut it away from the stem. And I'm going to compress it into my measuring cup. I need about a 1/2 cup or a 1/4 cup of kale. Let's say 1/2 cup. So I'm going to take maybe 2, 3, 4 leaves. So here's 2 leaves, easy peasy. And to measure kale, you compress it. And I've used 2 large leaves and already it's 1/2 cup, so I'm going to call that success. Put that in. If you want, you can do a quick stir. And I'm going to cover it. Actually, I'll let it go for about 3 minutes, and then I'll cover it. And then when I'm done, I'm going to put just a shake, maybe a 1/2 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon of umi plum vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar you want, and that's it. So cook for about 3 minutes, cover it, and you are done. So I'm almost out of time, so we don't have 15 minutes or so to wait for this to be done. So I'm going to, in a couple minutes, turn it off and just let it sit. But I'm going to invite my daughter to join us. So I did make a batch. My daughter is one of the kids in the kitchen. We started a new program called So Many Kids in the Kitchen, and we had 3 shows. So here she is. So Anu, show us the dish. Hold it up to the camera. Let me put it closer to the camera. So there's the finished product. You see the characteristic spiral of the quinoa, and there's just a pinch of salt in it. You can add some hot sauce. You can really jazz it up and add some chickpeas if you want. You can add some scallions or parsley as well. So what's it like, Anu?
They're really good.
So
I don't usually like quinoa, but I like this.
Great. So thanks for trying it. Thanks for being with us. I hope that you will try quinoa. And I'm delighted now to turn to switch kitchens. Let's move on to Dennis Houchin in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, who's going to share more about the versatile seed treated as a grain, quinoa. Okay, I apologize for technical difficulties. Denise is muted. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, Denise. You were muted. Let us switch to Cindy Thompson while Denise figures out her technical issues. So Cindy, let's introduce Cindy in Seattle, Washington.
Hi, everybody. I am Cindy Thompson with Trimazing, and I'm a health and lifestyle coach and retired fire captain outside of Seattle, Washington. I'm going to do a couple things here to get caught up because I had some things I was going to do during Denise's section. So I'm going to get these waffles started so that you can see them come out of the waffle iron by the end of my segment. We just roll along here. That's what cooking's all about. All right, so today I'm working with oats and corn to make the best corn oat waffles. And they really are the best, and they're gluten-free. So I'm also gonna set my timer because I'm gonna talk and forget. So hold on. All right, so people often usually think of corn as a vegetable, but it's actually a grain. So that's why I'm including that today with my oats and corn in the waffles. So I've got a batch cooking right now. And as it's going, I want to show you how easy it is to make this batter. All you need is a blender, not even a high-speed one. So I've got my blender here. I'm going to change my view so you can see what I'm doing. So in my blender, I'm going to put my liquid first, because I found that putting your liquids in your blender actually will help things blend better. So I have 3.5 cups of water, and there's a teaspoon of vanilla in here. These waffles are so good. They're a hit with the grandkids. If you have kids that love waffles in the morning, this is so easy, and you can make waffles anytime. And adults love them too. So now I've got 3 cups of rolled oats. And you could use old-fashioned oats or instant oats, fast cooking oats, doesn't matter. So it's 3 cups. Put those in my blender. Next, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of cornmeal. And I ran out of cornmeal one time, and I used polenta, and it worked just fine. I've used masa too. It gets a little thicker, but any of those whole corn grains will work. Now I'm going to add some seeds. You can use any type of seeds you want in this. I'm using pumpkin seeds because I ran out of sesame seeds. We ate them all. But pumpkin seeds work just great. So do hemp seeds or sesame seeds. You can even use nuts if you want. And this is a 1/4 cup. Throw those in there. And some dried fruit. I'm using raisins. You could use dates or cranberries, cherries, any type of dried fruit. It's just going to give some sweetness. Put those in there. And finally, I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Very, very easy. These are ingredients you have in your pantry probably right now, and you could make these waffles as soon as we're done with this show. So now I'm just going to blend these up. Okay, so now I've got my batter. You can see here, it's just like a nice waffle batter. Waffle batter generally is a little looser than pancake batter. And speaking of which, you could use this to make pancakes. I just let this sit in the blender here all blended for about 15 minutes, and the oats will actually thicken up, and it's thick enough that you can cook these on the griddle for pancakes. So lots of options with this. So that is our batter. And no oil. I don't spray my waffle iron at all. And for my waffle iron, I add a 1/2 cup of batter to each section of my waffle iron. And it's not quite ready. I still have 4 minutes left. These waffles take about 6 to 10 minutes to cook, depending on your waffle iron. My waffle iron takes about 8 or 9 minutes. So I have some that are ready, fortunately, so I have some to show you. These waffles are crisp on the outside, they're fluffy on the inside, and just make a delicious, wonderful, whole grain, delicious, oil-free, refined sugar-free, dairy-free, egg-free waffle. They're just perfect. And they're gluten-free, if gluten is a concern for you. So I'm going to keep this cooking because I really want to show you how nicely they release. So I'm going to take my waffles that are nice and crispy, and you can put any type of topping that you like on these. So I thought it'd be fun, because peaches are in season right now, that I would make a peach Melba waffle. So I'm going to start with some beautiful peaches. I'll change my view here. I've got some beautiful peaches. So any type of fruit, maple syrup, nut butter, bananas. When I was growing up, we put applesauce on our pancakes and our waffles. That was the thing we did. Applesauce is so good on waffles and pancakes. And I've got some pure maple syrup. Put that on top of my peaches. They don't need a lot because those peaches are so ripe and sweet. Now I've got some plant-based yogurt. It's vanilla. I put some vanilla with it, because I like to have really fancy waffles. I don't know about you. I always loved when we would go to a buffet and they'd have the waffle bar where they had the strawberry waffles with the whipped cream. Well, I still want that as plant-based. And so I just use the vanilla yogurt. And next, I'm going to put some raspberries, because that is part of peach Melba. Peaches, cream, and raspberries. So there, I got a couple more raspberries. Let's put that in there. So this is our beautiful crispy corn and oat waffles. I'm going to change my view so you can see just how gorgeous they are. I love these waffles. And what's nice is you can let these cool down, put them in a container and put them in your freezer. They freeze beautifully. And then when you have a hurry morning that you just really need to get some breakfast, but you're in a rush, pull some of those frozen waffles out, throw them in your toaster oven. You have instant waffles that are whole grain, whole food, plant-based, and ready to go. So they're great for kids. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get these waffles. So I'm a little nervous because it's a little early, but let's see how these release. Oh, they release beautifully. Okay, that waffle iron had no oil on it, no spray. These are the first plant-based waffles I ever have had that don't stick. And then they're just crispy and beautiful. So, and they'll come right out. Okay, I'm gonna give them a couple more minutes just so that they're nice and crisp. But those are our waffles. Again, half cup in each of those slots, and you've got beautiful Belgian waffles. So if you're looking for more great and easy recipes, I have an online cooking class this week called Avoiding Environmental Chemicals, and online classes in September, Power Foods for the Brain and Food for Fitness. You can register on my website, which is trimazing.com, TRIMAZING, and just click on events to get more information. And as a special thank you for viewing and being with us today, I have a gift for you. Go to trimazing.com/gift, GIFT, and you can get a free copy of the Trimazing Produce Guide and learn how to select and store the best fruits and vegetables and take the guesswork out of produce. And while you're on my website, go ahead and learn about how I can work more with you on health coaching, cooking classes, zero waste, and more. So now it's on to my friend Ella Rodriguez from Providence, Rhode Island, and she's going to teach you more things you can do with oats. On to you, Ella.
Hi everybody, this is Ella coming to you from Rhode Island. Today I'm very excited to talk to you about oats. Oats are a whole grain. They are naturally gluten-free, and they come in a variety of different ways at the store. So you can find things that are like less processed, like rolled oats or steel cut oats, and that takes longer to cook, but they're really good and healthy for you because they have a lower glycemic index. That means the sugar that is naturally in the oats, it's released into the body at a slower rate, which is good for us. And there are other kind of oats that are a little bit more processed, like quick oats, instant oats, or oat flour that we can also use, and that's more processed, which means they're quicker to cook, but they have a higher glycemic index. Oats are very healthy and good for us. They have lots of vitamins and minerals. They're very filling. They have lots of fiber. They help us with weight loss. They help us relieve constipation. So for many reasons, we should include oats in our daily diet. So today I want to show you a couple of different recipes on how I try to introduce oats into my family's diet. And for today, I'm going to use the rolled oats ones, which are the most common oats that when we can think of oats, that's what we think of. So the first recipe that I want to show you guys is my go-to breakfast. And that is just oatmeal porridge. For that, I use half a cup of oats, half a cup of frozen blueberries. You can use any berries you want, but I just prefer frozen blueberries. And then about 1 cup of milk or so. And you can use any kind of plant-based milk you would like. And then all I do to this, I just mix it up a little bit. And then I like to put it in the microwave for a minute and a half, just to make it a little creamier. But if you don't have frozen berries, you do not have to warm it up or microwave it. You can eat it just like that and just add your own fruit or fresh fruit or something to it. But because they're frozen berries, I like to put it in the microwave. And fun fact, Dr. Esselstyn likes to have his oats about a couple of times a day. So we know they're good for you, right? If Dr. Esselstyn has them. So when I take them out of the microwave, they're nice and creamy like this. And I love to have in mind some strawberries. So I like to add that to it. And I like a little crunch. So I put some pecans to it. So that is my to-go-to breakfast, and also a little bit of flaxseed for omega-3s. That's my to-go-to breakfast 5 days out of the 7. The next recipe I want to show you, which is another quick one, is overnight oats. And for that, I like to use my salsa jars. I save them. They're great for this. And all you do is you add half a cup of oats to it, and a tablespoon or so of chia seeds. That's gonna make it nice and creamy. And then a cup of milk. And this is basically your base that you have for your overnight oats. And to this, you can just let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. I'm gonna mix it with a fork. I like mixing with a fork just so I can break down the chia seeds very good, so there's no little lumps of chia together. So just like that, you put it in the refrigerator for a couple hours. I made my other ones in the morning or just overnight. And that's your base. So to that, you can add any nuts, any dried fruits. You can really be creative with it. So what I've done ahead of time, I made a breakfasty one. So I put some raisins into this one, and I'm going to add just some fresh pecans maybe. And now I can just take this to work if I was to go to work in the morning. So it's ready to go. You can eat it just like that. And I made another one, which is more chocolatey. So it's more like a dessert type, right? So I just served it up a little bit over here. So to that, I added some cocoa powder. So I'm gonna add some chocolate chips to it, some nice fresh strawberries, and I can enjoy that just as a dessert. So those are some other ways that you can enjoy your overnight oats. My next recipe is a waffle recipe. This is my kids' favorite breakfast. They actually 8 and 10 now, and they're part of the So Many Kids in the Kitchen as well. And they make this breakfast by themselves, which makes me very excited in the morning. So all you have to do for this is you just put one banana. I call it a 1-1-1 recipe. So you just put in one banana, and the browner the banana, the sweeter it is. I like to save this for compost. Then you do 1 cup of milk. And to that, I'm going to add 1 cup of oats. That's it. You can add something else like cinnamon, flaxseed, something like that to it. But basically, this is the base recipe. You pour this on the blender. You can use any blender you want, by the way. And what you're going to have is this pourable batter that the oats are going to suck up the milk, and it's going to be a little bit thicker side. So you can put this as a pancake on a hot plate, or you can put it in a waffle iron. And what comes out is this beautiful waffle that you can top in again with your favorite toppings. So I have some shredded coconut. Again, my kids love those chocolate chips, so I'm going to put in there. I love the crunch of the nut. And then as far as the syrup goes, sometimes we do maple syrup directly, but most of the time I like to mix it up, the ratio of 1 to 2. So let's say 2 cups of blueberries, frozen blueberries, with maybe 1 or half a cup of maple syrup. And I just use that as a syrup just to put a little bit more nutritious. And now you have a beautiful maple syrup that has blueberries right in there. It's super sweet, it's delicious, you're not gonna miss anything. All right, my other recipe that I wanted to share with you is burgers. And for this, I'm using Jeff Novick's concept. So what he does is he uses 1 cup of beans, any beans you want. I'm using black beans right now. And sometimes I do this in the food processor just to mush it up a little bit more, but you can just use a fork if you want to mush up your beans, or you can just leave it as is. And to that, I'm going to add half a cup of rice. This is a combination of quinoa and rice, actually, that I'm just going to add brown rice. Half a cup of oats. Any seasonings you want. So I have a combination of garlic, onion, some cumin, but you can really be creative over here and season it up the way you would like to. And then some kind of liquid. So over here I have 3 tablespoons of tomato sauce that I'm going to add to this, but you can use ketchup or something else. Sometimes if I have a nacho sauce left over or something like that, I just use just that. And all you have to do is just mix it up really good until it becomes the consistency that you can make patties out of it. And then you might want to leave it in the refrigerator for about half an hour or so, just so that the oats absorb all the liquid and may they stick together. And then what you have, you broil them for about 10 minutes in the oven, and you have this beautiful, nice patties. And you can also make meatballs, by the way, out of them. And they're nice and sturdy, by the way, so I'm just gonna break it down to show you. So it's not mushy, it's perfect for a burger, or you can just eat it with a dip or something like that, like a hummus dip, just like they are. Very delicious. All right, and the last way that it's common for us to use oats in our family is to make cookies. Now, who doesn't like cookies, right? So for that, I use 2 very ripened bananas. That, again, you can do this in a food processor if you like to, or you can just mush it up with your fork, up to you. And I'm going to add 1 cup of applesauce. This is unsweetened applesauce. And 4 cups of oats that I'm going to put. So again, in a food processor, this is a little bit easier, but that's fine just like that. And then you're going to mix this very, very good. And this is your base recipe, okay? And to this, you can put things like raisins, you can put things like nuts or shredded coconuts, things like that. My kids love to put chocolate chips, vegan chocolate chips, of course. You just mix this very good. You make them into cookie shapes, and then you put them in the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. And then what you have left is this nice, delicious cookies that are nice and chewy and very versatile, so you can, change up the recipe whichever way you want to. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I hope you got some ideas from me. And next, we're going to try to go to Denise in, I'm not sure where she is. So going to Denise, hopefully the technical difficulties are gone.
Okay, I apologize about the technical difficulties. There seems to be an issue with Denise's phone. So let's move on to Angelita Hughes in Greenville, South Carolina. Take it away, Angelita.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Angelita Alvarez Hughes. I am from Greenville, South Carolina. The name of my company is Earth Seeds and Water. And what I'm making for you guys today is pozole, which the base of it is corn, and it's known as hominy as well. Corn is the staple of the Mexican kitchen. So what this is dried corn, and it's been reconstituted. You can buy it canned, frozen, or dried. And pozole dates back to the Aztec times. So there's quite a few steps in here, and I believe the recipe is available for everyone, but it consists of using dried chilies. This is a pasilla, which is a very smoky flavored pepper. This is a guajillo, which is sweet and gives you lots of color. They both add a lot of flavor to it. You're going to use garlic, a lot of garlic. It's in the recipe. And when you're cooking Mexican food, you definitely want to use a white onion. There's something about the combination of the dried peppers with the garlic and the white onion that really gives you that old Mexican kitchen flavoring. Once you've reconstituted the peppers, you've got to reconstitute them in hot water. And you put the peppers and the garlic and the onions in a blender, and you're going to end up making a paste, almost looks like a chocolate sauce. You take this sauce and you cook it in a pan for about 20-30 minutes because you want all the flavors to get incorporated. And you're going to add to that cumin. You're going to ground it up, or you can buy it already ground. You want to use Mexican oregano. And if you like it really, really spicy, chile de árbol. I only add about 2 because I'm not really good on really, really spicy. I just like it savory. So what you do is you cook the hominy in a large pot. You're going to drain it, you're going to rinse it, and then you're going to take that and put it in a big pot, and you're going to add 3 times the amount of water. To that big pot, you're going to add 1 large onion. You're going to take away the little papery outer layer, and then you're going to do the same with a head of garlic. You want to keep them intact, but what you want to do is you want to cut them on the outside part, so that way the water can get in there. This is what's going to flavor your stock. The same thing with the onion. I like to use a skewer, so then that way I don't have to go out and fish all the individual onion pieces out of there, because when you go to add your sauce to it, you want to take out the garlic and you want to take out the onion. You're going to add 3 bay leaves to it, and you're going to let it cook for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. The finished product, I'm serving it here, is a rich burgundy soup, and this is what it looks like. You can add jackfruit to it if you'd like, or you can add diced minced mushrooms, whatever mushrooms you want to add to it to give it more consistency to it, to make it a little bit thicker. The maize, or the corn, like I said, is a staple of the Mexican kitchen. They grind it up and they use it to make tortillas. They use it to make gorditas. They use it to make tamales. They also use it to make something called champurrado, which is mixed with ground cacao seeds and water, and it makes a thick oatmeal, almost cream of wheat consistency drink that they have in the morning, and they usually pair that with a tamal. The original way to cook this is with pork, but of course we don't even want to think about that. So then to finish it all off, you want to top it with different cabbages. I like to use green and purple, and this gives it that crunch, but also is another way to kind of hide some vegetables in there. You want to also add some diced white onion. One thing about the white onion is it does have a little bit of a zing to it, so I always rinse it under cold water after I've already minced it up, and that kind of gets rid of some of the bite. And then you're also going to want to add cilantro, and the cilantro, I use the stalk and everything. To me, the stalk has more flavor than the actual leaves, so we add that to it, and I'm going to show you how I prepare it. So I'll add my cabbage to it, and then we're going to add the onion. And this is more of a soup that's served for weddings, or got a bit of a hangover if you had a little bit too much wine. So it's usually like a Sunday morning type of soup, but I like it all the time. I don't care how hot it is outside. And with the Mexican kitchen, you get a lot of vegetables. It's just, my husband loves it, my children love it, and to me, there's nothing better than that except another bowl. So then you're going to add a little bit of avocado to it to give yourself just a little bit more protein on there. And you're going to squeeze some lime juice on there. And then the key here is you're going to take some dried oregano, put it in the palm of your hands, and you're going to rub your hands together, your palms together, and let it just fall on there because it's releasing the oils, and you'll be able to smell it. It's just, oh, it smells delicious. And it's usually served with tortilla chips because we're trying to cut down on the fat as much as possible. I took corn tortillas, I cut them into strips, and I put them in my air fryer at 400 for about 4 minutes. And now I've got fat-free tortilla chips, all the flavor, none of the fat. And this is what your bowl is going to look like. And if you like the added heat, I also like to boil a serrano pepper in there when I'm making my stock. And I just like to add that to the side just to give it just another little level of heat if you like that. So that's one way to use the maize and incorporate it into your everyday meals. If you have any questions about how to prepare this, please inbox me. Like I said, the recipe is available for everyone. Again, the name of my company is Earth Seeds and Water, and I really appreciate your time. And next up is Carolyn in Charleston, West Virginia.
Thank you, Angelita. That looks delicious, and I really want to try it. That looks fabulous. Usually, you see me in Montgomery, Alabama, but today I'm visiting my in-laws because my father-in-law is having a very big birthday today, and so we are here visiting. So I'm in Charleston, West Virginia, and this is their lovely kitchen at my in-laws' house, and I am delighted to tell you today about farro, or farro. Some people pronounce it farro, some people say farro, tomato, tomato. And so farro is an ancient grain that you could actually consider to be the maybe grandmother of what we consider our current wheat. And so it is very much a type of wheat, but it is much older than what we currently use in cooking as wheat. And so there are actually more than one kind of farro. There's 3. And the kinds that we use here in the United States is called emmer farro, or farro medio. So it's sort of a medium-sized grain. There are 2 other kinds as well. One is called farro piccolo, or einkorn wheat. And then the other one is farro grande, or also called spelt. So spelt and farro are basically very, very connected to each other. They're both a triticum species. And so the kind that we typically eat here is the medium-sized farro medio. So when it's uncooked, it looks somewhat like wheat berries. But once it's cooked, it looks a little more like barley. It's really, really good for you. It has a very unique nutty flavor, but it's also extremely high in protein, in fiber, in zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B3, which is also known as niacin. So it is extremely good for you. One serving has about 170 calories, sorry, and it has about 1 gram of fat, 5-6 grams of fiber, and 5 or 6 to 7 grams of protein. So you can find farro in most grocery stores. It's going to look like Bob's Red Mill has this kind of farro. Whole Foods has a different kind they call Italian farro, but pretty much all of this is that medium-sized grain that I was talking about, emmer farro, and that's more traditional in the United States. So if you go to other countries, you're going to find the farro piccolo, or the very small einkorn wheat grains, to be a little more common, especially in European countries. So you can also find spelt here in the United States. For some reason, they don't seem to call it farro, but it is related. It's about the same thing. So one of the best ways I have found to cook farro, and you can always follow the package directions, whatever it says on the back, and that's going to vary depending on what brand you buy, but you're basically going to put a cup of farro in about 2 to 3 cups of water, sometimes 4, depending on the brand, and then cook it on the stove for about 30 minutes, and then drain any excess water that's left. But you want it to end up having a nice, sort of chewy, barley looking consistency. So I hope you can see that, but it's really nice and soft, but very chewy, has a great texture to it. But my favorite way to make farro, and this is so fast and easy if you have an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker. So what you'll do is take 1 cup of farro to 2 cups of water, put it in your Instant Pot or your pressure cooker, bring it to full pressure, and then let it cook for 10 minutes. Then just naturally let the pressure come down for about 5 minutes, then manually release it. And at the end of that, you have perfect farro. And if there's any liquid left, go ahead and just drain it out. It's fine. And you could rinse it if you want to. So farro does tend to get a little gummy if you don't rinse it when you're done. So it depends on what you want to use it for. So you can throw farro into soups. You can throw it into salads. I really like to take cooked farro when I have some left over and just toss it in a green salad, because it's going to add some protein and some fiber and all those other nutrients we talked about, it actually contains a lot of those essential amino acids that Dilip was talking about earlier. So they're, it's very high in protein, but lots and lots of fiber too. So it's got all those good things for you and none of the bad stuff. So the best way that we like to make it at home, and this is probably my husband's favorite salad ever, is to take it and mix it with a lot of things that are currently in season at home in Alabama, but also here in West Virginia. So I took a cup of farro and cooked it in the pressure cooker. My father-in-law just got a new Instant Pot for his birthday today. So we broke it in with farro. So I'm adding it to this nice, beautiful bowl. And then we're going to add corn. So this is about 2 ears worth of corn. It's about a cup. You could, and the recipe that will be on our Facebook page is going to say that you cut fresh corn off the cob. You can do that, or you could use frozen corn. So what I'm using today is frozen corn from Whole Foods that's already been roasted. So you can buy roasted corn, which I think adds a delicious touch to it. So you could cook it yourself. You can buy it at Whole Foods or any frozen corn. And then we're adding that. And then we're going to add something else that's in season. Peaches, which seems to be a theme today. So we have peaches again, and they have been diced up. That's about a cup worth of peaches. Mix that up. And then we're going to throw in some tomatoes. So it's about a cup worth. Tomatoes are also in season. I really like to eat things that are in season because they tend to be a lot fresher than things that have been on a truck for a few weeks coming from another country. Maybe consider going to your local farmer's market and finding things that were just picked that day or the day before. They're much fresher, lots more nutrients as they don't have to sit in a truck for a really long time. So we've added that, our tomatoes, and then we're going to add some green onions. That's about 1/3 of a cup of green onions. And give that a little mix. And I'm going to add some mint. So this is some beautiful fresh mint, which we have lots of growing in my backyard in Montgomery. All right, so fresh mint. This sounds like a really odd flavor combination, but if you taste it, you will be amazed at how very good this is. So we're adding in some garlic. This is 1 clove of minced garlic, which I'm going to mix in really, really well. A little pinch of sea salt. So if you are on a low sodium diet, then you can, this is optional. You do not have to put the sea salt in. So that's just a pinch of sea salt, up to maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon. I probably wouldn't go higher than that. And then the dressing is just lemon juice. So this is 3 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And that really brightens up the flavor. The other reason we use lemon juice in cooking is to keep things from turning brown, right? So, and the reason for that is lemon juice is very high in antioxidants. And so when you have things like peaches that are delicious, but they don't have as many antioxidants, meaning they're going to turn brown a little bit faster. And so that's the reason we put lemon juice in, to keep them from oxidizing. It's an antioxidant. And then the last ingredient is one of my favorites. It is some slivered almonds. And these are, I'm sorry, are they sliced or slivered? Slivered almonds. Okay, so slivered almonds are the kind that look like little sticks. Instead of the flat slices, they're little sticks. And so I would leave these off until the end. If I was going to serve this at a potluck or for dinner later today, I would just leave the almonds off until it's time to serve them. And then when it's time to serve, go ahead and put them on, because they tend to they can get a little soggy if you put them on and then wait for several hours. So leave them off until you're ready to serve. It is absolutely delicious. And I really hope that I have convinced you, if you've never tried farro, give it a try in soups, stews, salads, throw it in anything. And it's absolutely delicious and super healthy. And now I'm going to introduce you to my friend, Janan Orhun in Calamandrana, Italy. Take it away, Janan.
Sorry to interrupt, Janan. Your audio is off. We cannot hear you. Janan, we cannot hear you. Your audio is off. I apologize to all our viewers for our technical problems today. We cannot hear Janan. I'm afraid we are going to have to move on to Mark, and we will try to resolve the issue. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Mark Serkvenik in the Chicago area. Mark, I can't remember the city you're in, so I'm sure you can share that with us. Welcome, Mark.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mark Serkvenik, and I'm in a suburb of Chicago, south of Chicago, called Mokina, Illinois. So I'm about 35 minutes outside of Chicago in the southwest area. So I've been a vegan for about 2.5 years now. And one of the reasons I became a vegan was for health, but I stayed because of the food. And one of the foods that has attracted me over the years is freekeh. Now, a lot of you probably have never heard of freekeh, but freekeh is a wheat, and it's actually durum wheat that's harvested while the grains are green, and the seeds are still soft. You can buy freekeh in your
L'audio microfono è stato attivato,
your
riattivato il video sotto
your
interrotto.
international grocer area, and
Okay, I don't
it
understand what he's talking.
It comes in green, and it looks a little bit like this. And when you cook it up, it just cooks up beautifully, nice and fluffy. And I'll talk a little bit about this cooking process in a minute. So going back to how freekeh is produced, it is then once it's green, it is then piled and sun dried. The piles are carefully then set on fire with straw, and the shaft burns. Under these conditions, because the moisture content of the seed is really high, it prevents the seed from burning. So just the shaft, just the chaff, just the outside, the wheat is then roasted, so it becomes this nice and smoky aroma when you cook it. It's just got a lovely uniform flavor and texture and color. So what happens though is once it is burned, the chaff is still attached, and then it's threshed or rubbed. And in Arabic, the term for rub is farik, and thus we get the word farikeh. So you could actually farik, if you will, any type of grain, any type of wheat, but this one particularly is green durum wheat. So freekeh typically, again, as I said, refers to durum wheat, and the process is thought to be about 23. It goes back to about 2300 BC. So allegedly, you know how folklore goes, a Middle Eastern village came under an enemy attack, and their crops were young, and the green wheat caught on fire during that siege. Well, the villagers then ingeniously found a way that they were able to salvage their food supply by rubbing away that burned chaff and to reveal that roasted wheat. And again, that freekeh or farik is means to rub or the rubbed one. So freekeh is really very popular today in Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cuisines, and you can find it very frequently in countries used in dishes, countries such as Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, and Syria. So a little bit about my recipe today. So my recipe is freaking awesome freekeh and roasted cauliflower. So first of all, what you want to do is you're going to take some freekeh, and my recipe calls for excuse me, a cup and a quarter of freekeh. In there goes some slivered almonds, a couple cloves of garlic, salt, cumin, as well as coriander, and then vegetable stock. So what you do with all those spices and ingredients is you put those in a pot and you roast that all together, and it just gets this beautiful aroma. My wife was out shopping while I was preparing the dish, and she comes in and she says, it just smells wonderfully. It has this nutty roasted aroma, just kind of fills the house. In fact, I even used smoked cumin, which even added to that roasted smoky flavor. And then it cooks up in this beautiful, after about 20 minutes cooking it in some broth, it just cooks up into this beautiful pilaf type of a dish. So that is really your base for your dish. So I'm just going to lay out a little bit of freekeh on, if you notice, a very, very old plate. This is actually my wife's grandmother's plate back from the 1940s. And just going to lay some freekeh out on that. And then on top of that goes some wonderfully roasted cauliflower. Now the cauliflower I do right in my Instapot. I've got one of those Instapots that has all different types of settings. I roasted this for about 15-20 minutes, and you'll see from the roasting process, it gets these lovely little charred tips, and that again further enhances that lovely roasted flavor. So I'm just going to throw a little bit on there, and now we're going to make a wonderfully garlic tahini sauce. So in that garlic tahini sauce, we're going to take 3 tablespoons of tahini. Tahini is pulverized, basically pulverized sesame seeds, and as you make it similar to like a peanut butter, it draws all the oils out. So I'm going to put that 1/3 of a cup of tahini in my dish here. Along with that is some pressed garlic. I'm going to take a couple of cloves of pressed garlic. I've tried this recipe a couple different ways, and I find that pressed garlic is a little bit better because you're not cooking it. You don't get any kind of chunks or anything like that in the garlic and in your sauce. So I just kind of squeeze it really nicely. You just see how you just squeeze that wonderfully pressed garlic and just scoop a little bit off, and that's it. And then to that, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of lemon juice and put that right in there. And then I'm just going to whisk that up a little bit with my handy dandy whisk. And you just want to make kind of a little emulsion, and then add about 1/3 of the cup of water, or you could use aquafaba. The original recipe, and again, this will all be included in our Facebook page, all the recipes. The original recipe calls for oil. Of course, the diets that we all follow and that we support and teach people how to convert to is a whole food plant-based diet that uses little to no oil. So I use water. You can also use aquafaba, and some of you may not be familiar with aquafaba, but aquafaba is the viscous liquid from a can of chickpeas. So when you open up that chickpea can and you pour it into a sieve and let all that liquid drain out, that's called the aquafaba, and it's a viscous, flavorless liquid. I'm choosing to use water today, and I'm just going to whisk some water in, again, about 1/3 of a cup, and just kind of whisk that up really, really nicely. And it's going to kind of mix all the lovely tahini and garlic and lemon juice in there. And then if you like a little kick to it, we're going to put a little dash of red pepper flakes in there and just whisk that up a little bit. And then I'm going to bring my wonderful dish that I started to plate with the freekeh and the cauliflower, and I'm going to spoon a little bit of my garlicky, let's kind of say that 10 times fast, garlicky tahini sauce right on the top of that. Doesn't that just look wonderful? Just a little bit right on there. And then to top this, my recipe calls for some sesame seeds. Right, so that's gonna, and these are roasted sesame seeds. These are already pre-roasted. So again, adds a little bit more of that depth of flavor. I'm salivating just talking about this. I'm gonna throw some raisins on there for a little bit of sweetness. All right. If you have fresh parsley, now would be the time to put some fresh parsley in. I didn't have any fresh parsley, so I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit of dried parsley on that. And folks, I'm gonna give this a taste and let you know how it tastes. So a little bit of freekeh in there, a little bit of cauliflower, and my raisin. I gotta get a raisin in there, and my garlicky tahini. Almonds are in there too, by the way. They're all roasted initially with all those lovely vegetables, with the grains and the seasoning and so forth. Gotta tell you, there's a sweetness, there's a smokiness, and it's a subtle smokiness. And very, very filling, as we know, fiber fills this up, high in calcium, high in protein. So I encourage you to try freekeh, something that you've probably never heard of before, but you'll freak out when you have it. It's so freaking good. So thank you very much. If you're interested in some other recipes, again, we'll include our recipes of all my colleagues here in this Facebook page. But my business, I'm a Food for Life instructor, and my business is called Let's Eat Great Food. And my website is Let's Eat Great. And I'm actually got a couple of free classes coming up, a couple in September and a couple in October. September classes, I've got a couple of free classes, little 1 hour previews of my full classes, which you're welcome to join. And those classes are on diabetes and living with diabetes. And I've got some classes in October on heart disease and eating for a healthy heart, as well as my full-blown classes as well. But encourage you to go to let'seatgreat.com, check out some of my classes, sign up for a little free preview. You'll see what the classes are about. Won't cost you anything but your time. Thank you very much. Hopefully you'll try our freaking awesome freekeh recipe. And now I'd like to turn it over to my friend and colleague Lori Courage, who is in Long Island, New York.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you all. My name is Lori Courage. I'm right outside of New York City in Long Island, and I'm here today to talk to you about bulgur. Actually, no, I'm here to talk to you about the way that buckwheat groats work in a burger recipe, which is like crazy. So, so let me tell you a little bit about this. So buckwheat groats have been around for 8,000 years, and they're an ancient grain, and you normally find them in flour. You might see soba noodles, kasha, crepes. So they were actually one of the most popular grains up until about the last century, when corn and wheat really took over. They've been very common. They're actually a pseudo cereal. They're a seed of a fruit. So this is naturally gluten-free, and it's really unrelated to wheat at all. So you would cook these the same way you would cook many grains, with a 2-to-1 liquid to grain ratio. And many people really enjoy them just dry roasted in a pan. They're delicious. They're low also in a glycemic index, and they're a great source of fiber, manganese, magnesium. They only have 150 calories, and they have 6 grains of fiber in a cup. So it's a great source of protein, fiber, and really nutritious. So the thing I was really most surprised about with buckwheat is that it can be blended into something that really replaces like a binder for burgers. So what I did here is I took buckwheat groats. So I bought them in bulk, which is great. And then I soaked them, and you typically have to soak them for about 4 to 6 hours. And when you soak them, they end up with this nice green sort of texture. And all I'm really going to do in this recipe, as you see, is I'm going to take these soaked groats. And by the way, I just want to show you how I do this. You know, we all talk about how easy or hard, and so many of the other instructors have been saying this. You know, you want to cook things in batches. So what I did is I soaked a lot of them today, and I ended up putting them in the freezer. So if you take single serving portions, now they're already pre-soaked. This is a great way to keep them. Plus, buckwheat groats don't last as long as some other oats. For example, I might have oats. I have a 50-pound bag of oats in my pantry. You know, that might last the better part of 6 months. Something like buckwheat groats is going to last probably for about 2 months if you don't freeze it. So I find rather than freezing it on its own, I freeze it and ready to make packages so I can use it. So today, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this soaked buckwheat groats and I've rinsed them. And now I'm just going to press. And when you leave them running for just a little bit, you're going to notice something really kind of amazing. It becomes very creamy and tasty. So, another 1 minute. And I wanted to show you this part. Because to be honest with you, I was really surprised. And if I was doing this on my own without being in a class, I might even let it run a little bit more. But can you see how creamy that is? It's incredibly creamy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that creaminess and I'm basically going to make the base for a burger. And you could make so many burgers here. This would be a great foundation for pretty much any burger you make. As a matter of fact, have you ever soaked lentils and then use them in a burger? You could substitute this so easily and end up with buckwheat. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some medium sweet potatoes. What I did while we were moving around a little bit, I thought it might be helpful to get some things done. So I just finished making some onions. And I just cooked the onions with a little bit of vegetable broth, very simple. And I also steamed some potatoes. So I want to give you a little trick about steamed sweet potatoes. You heard about the Instapot before. So what I do with my potatoes, so in this case, it recommends that I mash them. And what can you see here, what all I did is I steamed them in the Instapot. And now I just sliced a little slice and the skin came off. But because we're all Food for Life instructors, we know how nutritious the skin is. So what I decided to do instead is just, and I wrote this in the recipe, what I decided to do is just cut up the little pieces of skin. So now they're bite size. So I'm going to take my skin and my sweet potato, and I'm doing it for both of them. The other thing is if you ever have a recipe where you're not using the skin of a sweet potato, I would leave it in a dish. It always disappears with my family whenever we do that. Okay, so I'm just going to cut up the skin and throw it in. You know, this is no different than if you had a black bean burger. So now I have mashed sweet potatoes, and I'm just going to mash them a little bit. Now to add more protein to this, what I did earlier is I did the same thing in the food processor with some chickpeas. So I just pulsed it. It's the kind of thing where it would probably be kind of difficult if you were doing that all with a fork. So just a little bit of pulsing in a bowl. It doesn't need, as we heard earlier, doesn't need a high-speed blender. And one of the cool things here, because we're all talking about grains, is you can add in another grain as well. So I tried this earlier this week, and I made it with quinoa. And quinoa has a really great texture and flavor, and we know quinoa is loaded with protein. And what I'm doing here is I'm just mixing it with brown rice. So you can imagine here. So I have buckwheat groats, I have some sweet potatoes, and last but not least, I'm going to add in an onion. So one of the great things about a recipe like this is, for the most part, maybe you didn't have the buckwheat groats before, but after today you will. For the most part, you'll end up finding that these are really simple ingredients. You could substitute so many of them if you liked a different type of onion. You could probably even substitute a different type of sweet potato. There's so many. And now the good news about this particular recipe is now the buckwheat groats are holding everything together. One thing I do find, and now I'm going to add the seasoning. The seasoning here is paprika, garlic powder, salt and pepper to taste, and I added some cinnamon. I happen to be a big fan of cinnamon when it comes to sweet potatoes. It's a little unexpected, and it adds just an unexpected pop of flavor. I like these because they're kind of sweet on the sweet side. We make so many things that are savory when we make grains. It's nice to have something a little sweet. And now what I'm going to show you is, since this is a little bit warm because I just put in the oven, sorry, the onions, and also because the sweet potatoes were warm. You know, usually you'd find a recipe and it would say, well, go ahead and shape it like a burger and make it. So I'm showing you here, and this is what I put in the recipe. I'm finding that if I haven't had the chance to put this in the refrigerator before I cook it, I'm just going to dollop 2 or 3 tablespoons or so of potato. And now look what happens. I can take this and just sort of shape it like a burger. And when I do, I've got this great sweet potato flavor. You're not really tasting the buckwheat groats other than it's a little bit nutty and it's got a really nice texture to it. And then I'm going to take that and put that in the oven. Now, when I do, about 15 minutes later, I turn it over. And see the magic of television. I turn it over, and what I do then is I put a little bit of barbecue sauce, and date-based barbecue sauce is awesome. I put it there, I put it back in the oven for another few minutes. And what comes out the other side, so you can see, is just a beautiful burger. It's got this great flavor to it. And it's much more of a kind of a grain-based burger. You know, one of the complaints I always hear about veggie burgers is sometimes they fall apart on the grill. They're hard to transport if you're bringing them to a friend's barbecue when we go back to seeing our friends again. And so this is a really nice texture. And what I love about it is this is a great to-go food. It's so sturdy and substantial. It's got lots and lots of flavor, but you could throw this in the freezer, take it out, and have dinner ready in about 5 minutes. So that's just kind of an idea of how these buckwheat burgers can work. And I would challenge you to find other ways to include buckwheat in the recipe. I know, because I now have a number of these packages in my freezer, I'm going to be experimenting kind of once a week to see what I could add to turn this into a good substitute. You know, something like having buckwheat is also like 3/4 to a cup of buckwheat is about the equivalent of 3 eggs. So it's a really good binder as well. So thanks very much. And I'm going to turn this over now. Oh, and I also want to mention that I'm also teaching a bunch of classes this fall. My business is called encouraginggreens.com. And one of the classes I'm really excited about is helping you squash your cravings. So for all of us who are eating plant-based, but maybe there are some foods that are sneaking into our diet that we're trying to figure out how to avoid. That's one of my favorites that I'll be teaching as well. So lots of classes on cancer and heart disease and digestive health. So I hope you'll come join me on Long Island. And I'm turning this over now to Janin Orhan, and she's going to talk about bulgur.
Thank you, Laurie. And I'm so glad you're online because I know you went through that tropical storm and you didn't have electricity for 8-9 days or so. I'm so happy that you're there. Thank you for your lovely recipe and your introduction. Welcome everybody to Cascina Gallorsi in Palermo, Italy. Here I am back again in my kitchen sharing with you a recipe done with a really ancient ingredient once again. I'm using bulgur today, and bulgur was first cultivated about 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent in the southeastern parts of Turkey, what's known as Şanlıurfa today in Turkey. And that part of the country is just dear to my heart because before COVID, we were lucky to have traveled there, and the cuisine is just incredible. I couldn't help but get myself a book. It's called A Taste of Sun and Fire, and it's full of incredible recipes, and tonight's recipe comes to you from that book. Now, just one little thing, in that part of the world, in the Fertile Crescent, the 2 original wheats were grown, the emmer and the einkorn wheats, and they are still grown there today. And as a gene pool, they're being protected and grown for our food safety. So it's really exciting to travel to that part of the country. Bulgur is made with wheat, so it's not in its original form. The process of making bulgur was also developed a long time ago. It's a 4,000-year-old process. It's been used by people all these times. And basically, they take the wheat and they cook it in giant cauldrons, and then they dry them on rooftops on clean sheets, and then they break it into pieces and they sieve them through. And as you can see, sometimes you have the big pieces, And then you also have what's left over in the sieve, the really very sandy little pieces. And today's recipe will use the fine grain bulgur, which is really good for making burgers. And the one I have here is another kind of bulgur, which is called freekeh, which is what I think also Mark used. This is done with wheat which has been collected while it's still green, and then smoked, and then gone through the process. So it gives a nice smoky flavor to the dishes that you make with bulgur. Bulgur is, of course, very nutritious. It's got a lot of protein and fiber and vitamins, especially vitamin Bs, and a lot of minerals. And today's recipe is sort of like a power bar, a spicy, savory power bar, because together with bulgur, there's walnuts in it, and walnuts are full of protein. 1 cup of walnuts will give you about 18 grams of protein. And again, walnuts are full of potassium, manganese, zinc, which is really good for your immune system, all sorts of minerals and vitamins. So the two together is a powerhouse with good energy and good oils. The recipe today uses the small, very fine-grained bulgur. It also has pepper paste and chili peppers, garlic, onion, tomatoes, salt, and pepper. And the good news is this recipe does not need cooking. So basically you chop all your ingredients. The tomatoes get chopped really fine, the onions, the garlic, everything gets chopped really fine, along with the walnuts. First you mix your bulgur together with the pepper paste and the peppers and the onion and garlic. You really knead it really well. And then you add the chopped tomatoes and you continue kneading it. And then you add your walnuts, salt and pepper to your taste, and knead, and you're done. No cooking, no knitting. And this really fine-grained bulgur basically reactivates with the juices from the tomatoes. And I'd just like to show you, once you've done your mix, you wet your hand. I have them already prepared for you, but I wanted to make one here online. You just take it like that, squeeze it in your hand, and you have your lovely spicy bulgur burger to eat. And I have to tell you, tonight we had a pre-production party, and we were 4 nationalities here. We had somebody from Malta, somebody from Denmark, my Italian husband, and me, an American, Turkish American. So we all loved it. So this is one of those recipes you have to try and do at home. Well, I hope you will like my recipe and you will try it at home. So please, one thing I have to let you know, in the recipe that you will find on Facebook, there is, of course, the 2 tablespoons of pepper paste and 2 tablespoons of chili to use. Arrange it to your liking. It will get as spicy as you want it to be, or as much as you can tolerate. I hope you will enjoy this dish as much as we have enjoyed it, and you'll try it at home. And if you have any questions, please do submit them on Facebook. We will get to them and answer any questions you may have. And with this, I conclude my session tonight. Thank you very much, and sorry for the technical difficulties we had before. I would like to pass the baton over to my colleague, Denise Zimmerman in Lakeland, Florida. Take it away, Denise. Bye, everybody. Arrivederci from Italy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Debbie Zimmerman, and yes, I'm in Florida. My business is PhytoFit, and I teach people how to prevent chronic diseases or overcome them. So tonight, or this afternoon, I am going to be telling you about sorghum. Sorghum is an ancient grain, and the one that I am using is coming from India. A lot of them come from Australia, and basically you'll find sorghum where there are droughts. It would not be something that we would have here in Florida because we have way too much rain, but their drier climates can grow sorghum. It is part of the millet family. Actually, it is known as the giant millet. And this is it right here. You can see that it is shaped like quinoa, and it is round and plump. And what I like about it is it's very, very chewy. I cooked my sorghum with vegetable broth, and it provided another dimension of flavor to it. And of course, the Imagine vegetable broth is lower in sodium. And I'm going to emphasize low sodium. And the main reason I'm doing that is because I work with a lot of people who have heart disease, diabetes, and other complications that do not use sodium or cannot use sodium. So I am making this as low sodium as possible. And I want to mention to you also that your taste adapts. You know, if you are going from the standard American diet and you go to a low sodium diet, you are going to taste a difference. However, as you progress in your transition to a whole food plant-based diet, your taste buds will actually change, and you will really adjust and appreciate the low sodium. So today, I have already cooked my millet, and I have put that in here. So I have sorghum, the giant millet. So I've already have the sorghum in here. And next, I am going to add 2 cups of cooked lentils. And lentils are very easy to cook. There is no need to soak them. All you have to do is put them in a pot. And if you want 2 cups of cooked lentils, then you're going to use 1 cup of dry lentils and add it to 2 cups of water. Okay. Following the recipe, it calls for half a cup of chopped walnuts, and I'm adding those to our food processor. And next we have our dry ingredients. So I have 2 teaspoons of oregano, cumin, and chili powder. So 2 teaspoons of each of those. Next, I am going to add nutritional yeast. Now, if you're not familiar with nutritional yeast, it is not brewer's yeast that you would put in something like beer. And it is not a yeast that you would use in making bread. It is a cheesy flavor. It's got a nutty, cheesy flavor. It actually looks very much like fish food. So, you know, you wouldn't want to feed it to your fish, but basically that's what it looks like. I'm not sure that your goldfish would appreciate that as fish food. The next thing we are adding is salsa. Now you can make your own salsa, but I have chosen to use one that I bought in the store. So I'm just adding that to this, making it as easy as possible. The next thing is going to be a little bit of flavoring. And the recipe calls for coconut aminos, but I am using liquid aminos. So yes, it does give a little bit of a saltiness, but it's not as salty as a soy sauce, and it also is not as salty as coconut aminos. So I'm going to add that to our mix. The next thing was on the recipe, it calls for portobello mushrooms and onions, chopped garlic, and parsley. Now, our mushrooms and our onions have a lot of moisture to them. And when we're stuffing mushrooms, we don't want a lot of moisture because the mushroom itself is going to have moisture. So I put these in a pan, and I call it sweating. So I heated it up on a low fire or a low heat, and I basically got all of the moisture out of this. It doesn't look real appetizing because of the dark portobello mushrooms, but certainly it's very, very tasty. So in here we had the mushrooms, we had the onions, we also had chopped parsley and also chopped garlic. And so the next thing I'm going to do is add my breadcrumbs. And folks, don't buy regular breadcrumbs. You never know what you're going to be getting in them. This is Dave's Killer Bread, and we know that it has a lot of essential seeds in there. I roasted it, cooked it, and I just put it in the food processor and chopped it up. So I'm going to blend this. Sorry, another technical difficulty. It's not plugged in. One second. Sorry about that, guys. We try so hard to be prepared. Okay, so I don't want to make this mushy, and that's the important piece. We don't want to make it mushy. So I just pulse it a few times. I'm going to give it a stir because I'd like to keep things as whole as possible. Okay. Now that is ready. Now I am going to stuff my mushrooms. And I just want to mention that I have two sizes of mushrooms here. I have the great big one, and you can use this if you're going to have this as your main course. And certainly it will need a lot of time to cook, about 35 to 45 minutes. And then the next thing I'm going to do is add some nutritional or some nutty parm. Now I have the recipe for nutty parm, but basically it is equal parts of walnuts to equal parts of our nutritional yeast, then a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, and a teaspoon of Mrs. Dash. And Mrs. Dash is a salt-free substitute. It has some great seasoning, or it adds great seasoning. So I am just going to sprinkle that on here. Now I also have some smaller mushroom caps, and I can put this right on here. If you're having a party and you would like to serve stuffed mushrooms, this is always a great crowd pleaser. And I'm going to sprinkle some parm on there. Now, to keep this from sticking to the pan and also to add a little bit of flavor to our mushrooms, I am going to put vegetable broth on the bottom of the skillet, okay? I'm going to put this in the oven, and then I will cook it for basically 35 to 45 minutes. And this is what our dinner will look like. Our stuffed mushroom and a side of tomatoes. So I hope you will enjoy this. And now we are going to go to my friend Jen over in Louisiana. Take it away, Jen.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to my Louisiana kitchen. So I am here today. I'm going to talk to you about rice. We're all familiar with rice, but I'm going to make a dish that I hope inspires you to include more rice in your diet, and that's Louisiana red beans and rice. So before I start cooking, I want to talk to you a little bit about rice. Now, we're very familiar with it, but in Louisiana, it is a staple, and it should be because it is low cost and it's highly nutritious. So it includes fiber, protein, iron, zinc, niacin, magnesium, manganese, selenium, folate. You could make a song out of it, and it has all of that. Plus, it's low in fat, virtually no sodium, and of course, zero cholesterol. So you really need to include it in your diet. I cook with brown rice. It's the best. So brown rice is the whole grain, meaning it still has the bran layer intact, which carries most of the nutrients and the fiber. If you don't like brown rice, white rice is usually enriched with those vitamins, meaning that they put the vitamins back in after they strip it away, but they can't add the fiber back in. So if it's the flavor or the texture of brown rice that keeps you from eating it. What I highly recommend is to start with your cooked white rice and add cooked brown rice to it and increase the amount of brown rice gradually, and eventually you'll be eating brown rice and you'll love it and you'll be healthier for it. So that's a little bit about the health benefits of rice. But there's also thousands of varieties of rice, and they fall into three main categories. The long grain that we're used to, we get all the time stir fries and in restaurants and over stews and everything. And then there's a medium grain rice, which is a little bit stickier. It's shorter, of course, and it's great for risottos or rice pudding. And then there's a short grain rice, which you see with sushi usually. There's also some fun varieties of rice, like red rice and wild rice and black rice, which you're going to hear a little bit in the next segment. But let's start cooking. So I've already started sauteing my onions, you can see on the stove, to get those soft. And I am going to add the Creole Trinity, which is celery and peppers. Then I have green and jalapeno peppers here. And this is the Cajun Trinity for most foods in Louisiana. So we're going to saute these until they get soft. And what I'm going to do is, if it starts to stick to the pan, I'm going to add some vegetable stock. And I finally found a good use for my turkey baster to add vegetable stock to this dish. While this is getting soft, turn the heat up a little bit. I want to tell you some fun things that I learned about Louisiana when we moved here. One of the things is there's a difference between Creole and Cajun food. So the Creole food is known as city food. It's a little more sophisticated, a little more cosmopolitan, and it's got a high European influence on the flavors, as well as Native American and African, which makes it so yummy and delicious, and a great blend of seasonings. Now, Cajun cooking, Cajun food is brought, the Cajuns actually themselves are immigrants from France via Nova Scotia down to New Orleans area or South Louisiana, and they settled along the bayous. Their food is rustic and hearty, and it's usually cooked in one pot, often has a roux involved, and it is definitely influenced by their French heritage. So that's one fun fact. We're still waiting for this to soften up a little bit. The next fun fact that I learned is that red beans and rice was normally served on Mondays. So if it's Monday, it's red bean and rice day in Louisiana. And the reason for that is, back in the day, Monday was wash day. And just because it was wash day doesn't mean you get out of having to make dinner. So the women would put on a big pot of rice on the back of the stove and head out and spend their hours washing up clothes. So it was quite a task to do laundry back then. But it just makes it a great meal when you're busy. You can put the beans on the back of the stove and let them simmer for a couple hours, 2-3 hours. You can put it in your crock pot. You can even do it in an Instapot. So it is a great healthy meal, beans and rice always. Okay, so our vegetables are soft now, and I'm going to add the extra aromatics that are very popular. And in Louisiana, as most of the country, we never have garlic too far from our cooking area. And then the spices, which help identify this as a Southern Louisiana dish. So we have got thyme and oregano in here. We've got, of course, cayenne pepper, which is super popular in the South. There's some cumin. And then to bring in the African influence in the Creole cuisine, there is cinnamon in this dish, which is a little unusual when you think about a beans and rice dish. And I'm sauteing that up. I'm going to add a little more stock. And what we're doing here is bringing out those wonderful flavors of the aromatics. Smells so good. Okay, this takes about 30 seconds or so. You just want the flavors to shine. And now we're going to add the rest, and we'll be able to let it simmer. So always put a bay leaf in for extra flavor. I've got a can of no salt added diced tomatoes I'm adding to this. And I've got red beans here. Now, these are small red beans. They're not kidney beans. You can certainly use kidney beans. The red bean is a little bit smaller. And what I did with the beans, I soaked them overnight, but I soaked them in a brine water. It helps break down the shell a little bit, makes it softer in the middle, a little creamier. cooks a little faster. And also beans tend to stay together better. So the salted, it's probably about a tablespoon of kosher salt that I put in the water. Then I rinse them thoroughly to rinse that salt off. So you can see what we've got here. And now we're gonna pour in the vegetable stock to cover. And you wanna give it a good cover, about 2 or 3 inches over the top of those beans. So they have room, you have room for evaporation during the cooking, as well as giving the beans room to expand. Okay, so this is what we've got. Now I'm gonna put that for a simmer for a couple hours. Move it to the back of the stove. Awesome. And now it's time to move on to the rice portion, which is what this is about. So I am like the easiest way to cook things. So this is my hands-free, no nonsense rice making process. You can see here I have a large pot of water boiling, and I did put a bay leaf in there for extra flavor to get that infused into the rice water. And I have about 1.5 cups of rice here that I have rinsed, and that helps rinse off some of the starchiness and stickiness. I'm going to throw this in here. What we're going to do is bring that to a boil. And what I'm going to do is then let it simmer for 30 minutes, just on a low boil. But it needs to be boiling, not simmering. I apologize. Take that simmering word out. It's going to be on a low boil. You don't want a rolling, raging, volcanic boil. You just want the bubbles to continue on. And you can see it's already coming to that boil. I am going to move this to the back of the stove and let it continue to boil for 30 minutes. Great. And so I have a pot here that has already been sitting for 30 minutes. Move everything out of the way. I'm going to drain this. After the 30 minutes is up, you're going to turn off the heat that it's on. We're going to drain this rice. And then you're going to put it back in the pot. I'm going to leave that bay leaf in there for right now. And I'm going to put it off heat, covered, and let it sit for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, you end up with this awesome white, fluffy, brown, fluffy rice that's ready for your dish. So that is the rice, easy peasy. Now we're going to put the dish together. Clear some space here. So after the beans have cooked for several hours, this is what you end up with. This beautiful red beans and rice. Red beans. And we're going to put it over the rice and serve it. We just scoop it right over the rice. And we're not done yet. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put in. This one already has it, but when the rice is finished, we're going to season it with a little Louisiana hot sauce or Tabasco sauce. These two are from Louisiana to make it authentic, and use that. And you're going to brighten it up with a little apple cider vinegar. If you don't, if this seems weird to you, what I want you to do is give it a taste before apple cider vinegar, and then just put a little bit in there, and it will really brighten up your flavor. I highly recommend that. And here's the Louisiana word. Before we eat this, we have to add a little lagniappe, which means a little something extra. So I've got a garnish of parsley, garnish of green onion, and there you go. As they said, French say, c'est bon, it's good. And I just wanted to let you know that you can have your health and your Cajun too. This is an oil-free dish, super high in protein, fiber, and all those wonderful nutrients that we talked about earlier. And I really hope you try this and you're not afraid of cooking Cajun cuisine, because it's pretty much hands off, so you can do the laundry and eat healthy too that night. Okay, that's it for me. And now I'm going to pass you off to Susanna, who's in Evansville, Indiana, and she's going to talk some more about a different kind of rice.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm so excited to be cooking with black rice today. And if you can see in my jar, I first started cooking with black rice about maybe 4 or 5 years ago because I saw it in the grocery store in my rice aisle and it just intrigued me. I thought it actually is called black rice, but it has a little purple hue. And I just thought the color was so cool that I had to buy a bag and take it home and try it. So I've been cooking it in the traditional way and making lots of different recipes. Today, though, I'm going to make you one of my family's favorite recipes, and that is using black rice tacos. We love Mexican food. My husband grew up in New Mexico, so we've been roasting green chili this week from Hatch, and we just believe that any food could really be put into a tortilla or a flour tortilla and eaten. So what I'm going to do today is first make the filling for our tacos. Now I cooked my black rice last night. For this recipe, it really is better to cook your rice the night before or the morning of and let it cool in the fridge. And the first thing I'm going to do is just heat up my burner. And I like to use red onion. So I'm going to put some red onion in here. Now, if you're not familiar with black rice, I'm just going to put a splash of water so that I want my onion to get translucent. While that is cooking, let me tell you a little bit about black rice. Black rice, as a lot of the grains you've watched today, is an ancient grain. It's been around for about 10,000 years. And you might hear it called forbidden rice because back in China, the emperors and their families were really the only ones who were allowed to eat it because it is harder to grow and it does not produce as much when you're making, when you're planting and making rice. The yield is less. So it was only reserved for the emperors and their families in China. Thankfully today, it is more available. I have found this in every grocery store that I shop in Evansville, Indiana, so I'm sure you'll have no problem finding it. Some of the health benefits of eating black rice, we know that black rice is high in antioxidants, particularly anthocyanins. It has the highest level of anthocyanins than any other grain. So it's a great option for you to eat for health. We know that antioxidants also have, they help us to build our immune system. Black rice contains a lot of fiber, and it also contains vitamin E, which is good for your eyes, your skin, and your immune health. I'm going to add a little garlic now. I've got about 3 or 4 cloves. I always like to add more garlic than recipes call for. Black rice, again, as I said, it's very high in antioxidants. It's very high in protein. It's gluten-free. So if you, have to be gluten-free, then it is a good option to choose. One of the things I'm going to top our tacos with is mango salsa. When you do a search and you see a lot of recipes that have black rice in it, you see that mangoes and avocado are other flavors that go well with black rice, with its nutty kind of flavor. So I thought, when making my tacos, that a mango salsa would go perfectly on it. So next I'm going to put in my spices. Here I have cumin. I have some onion powder, obviously chili powder, and garlic powder. And then I have Mexican oregano. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Mexican oregano. I really wasn't until a few years ago when I started cooking more plant-based and really started using spices. But Mexican oregano is different from the traditional oregano that I had always used in my spaghetti sauce and other Italian recipes. Mexican oregano comes from the lemon verbena family. So it has a more citrusy flavor, and citrus, again, lemon, lime really goes well with chili and cumin and all the Mexican flavors of this recipe. you can see I like to put my spices in with my onions and garlic and let it heat for just a minute so that they really get to, it really enhances the flavor of what I'm doing. Oops. Now I'm gonna put in my rice and I'm gonna add a little bit of salsa, upwards maybe to a half a cup or a cup, depending on how much I need it. I want it to be, how wet I want it to be. So let me mix this up with the onions and the chili and all the other spices and the garlic. Again, I just love the color. One thing that you need to be careful of with black rice, it will stain. So you want to make sure that you take precautions because your clothing will stain. And like I said, it really is more purple than it is black. So, oh, this is smelling so good. I can't wait to eat it. Now I'm going to add, I have about half a cup of salsa here, and I'm going to add that. And then I'll decide if I need more. I might want to add the other half a cup. Now, again, you can, I have a mild salsa in here right now, but if you like it real spicy, you can add medium or even go with a hot. I think I'm going to go ahead and add the other half a cup of salsa. And this is my taco filling. Again, real simple. Just, you know, instead of adding, I've made lentil tacos, quinoa tacos. I've even used quinoa. Dilip made a wonderful recipe with quinoa. Black rice. It has, you know, you need to try it. It has a nutty, almost sweet flavor, and it just goes well with the spices. And it's so good for you with all the antioxidants and fiber. Okay. The next thing I'm going to make is the salsa. You just want to make sure this is heated thoroughly. So I think it's warm. So I'm going to turn off my burner. And now I'm going to make my mango salsa. And again, this is the ingredients I have here, farm fresh and local ingredients. These actually, we had a nice neighbor who has a lot of tomato plants, and he's been bringing us for the last 3 weeks a bag of tomatoes and cucumbers, and that's, you know, what a great neighbor. So I have some tomatoes cut up. I prefer red onions. You can use white or others. Some red onions, some jalapeno, but you could also use some green chili, like I mentioned before. Again, when you're cutting your jalapeno, you want to take out the seeds and the veins because that's where all the heat is. Now, if you like heat, then leave those in. And then diced mango. Mango, we know, is high in vitamin C, and vitamin C is good for our immune health. And then cilantro. I never had cilantro before I went plant-based, and now it is a regular staple. And the fresh, there's nothing like it. I'm going to top this off with just a little bit of lime juice. Squeeze that really well. Get that in there. And then just a pinch of salt. Now, again, I really don't use a lot of salt, and I might leave it out. But if you want a little bit, just put a tiny pinch of salt in there. And the last thing I want to show you before I show you my beautiful plate of tacos here is another really good Mexican vegetable fruit that we like to eat, and that is jicama. Jicama, we just got this today, and this is what a jicama looks like. You can see I cut off a little bit because I did add some jicama sticks to my tacos here, and also some avocado. But jicama is called the Mexican potato because it is, it looks like a potato, just a really, really big potato. And jicama is so good for you. It's got a lot of vitamin C, fiber. It's got a lot of gut health fiber that is really good for your stomach. So if you've never tried a jicama, go ahead and try it. I just like to, this is how it looks. You peel the outside and then I just cut this piece off, and I cut it in little strips just to put it on top of my salsa. It's crunchy. Okay, so it's like a potato, but it's sweet, and it just is really, really good. I even like to bake it sometimes. I'll make it in bigger French fries and bake it and roast it, and it's really good. All right. I just want to show you, you can see my plate. I put tacos on a romaine leaf, taco corn tortillas, some beans and jalapeno. Try black rice. I guarantee you're going to like it. Next is Karen Osborne, and she is in Austin, Texas, and she's going to be making a dish with wild rice. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Really, another dish. Mine's kind of similar to yours with black rice color and a salsa, but a different kind of salsa, but it's all good. All right, so I am Karen Osborne, and my website is My Food, Fitness, and Fun. And I'm going to be talking to you about wild rice. Wild rice is actually the seed of an aquatic grass that's native to the Great Lakes region of North America. And it's actually harvested green, and then it's taken to curing yards where the chlorophyll dissipates. Then it's taken to parchers where it's dried, and when it's dried like that, the starch is gelatinized and it gives it a nice nutty flavor and a chewy texture. But then the outer hulls are removed, and you get this nice, big, long, shiny black grain. And the rice is, it's bigger than other rices, so it takes longer to cook, takes longer to soak up the water and open that grain. But it is really high in fiber, it's high in protein, it's low fat, and it's got like 30 times more antioxidants than white rice. So it's also gluten-free, so it's allergy friendly. But how do I cook it? I've already cooked mine. You can tell that it's done by the way the grains open. This one, some of them are more open than others. Like the longer you cook it, the more water is absorbed and the grains plump up a little more. So I've cooked mine in the Instant Pot, about 35 minutes, a cup of rice, 2.5 cups of water, and cooked it on high pressure for 35 minutes. And then I let it absorb more water for 10 more minutes after the instant release. You can do it on the stove top. And if you do it, I do it on the stove top. I don't want to stand there. It takes longer. Don't want to stand there making sure it's not burning. So I add a lot more water than is necessary. I'll do like a cup of rice and 4 cups of water, and bring it to a boil, and then turn it down, let it simmer for about 45 minutes and check it. So if you like it, if the grains just start opening up, if that's good enough for you, like it chewy like that, you might take it off and let it absorb water for about 10 more minutes, 10 or 15 more minutes, just so it's to your liking. And then you can always pour off the extra water when you are finished. So I have started, I'm gonna stuff a poblano pepper with this. What I did was start water sauteing an onion before we started. And I mean, you could do anything with this rice that you would think of doing with any other rice. You can make a stuffing, you can make a soup, you can make a salad, you can make a flatbread, but I am gonna be stuffing the poblano pepper. And a poblano pepper is, it's got a really nice mild heat. And I roasted it. I'm gonna put my screen down so you can see what I have here. This recipe is really easy. It's in 3 components. So I took the peppers and I roasted them in the flame of my gas stove. So what you want to, and you can do this in the oven on the top rack close to your broiler if you want. But you just want to heat every side until the skin is black and blistered. And then you put it in a bowl and put it, cover it with the lid or a towel and let it sweat for 10 or 15 minutes until it's cool enough to handle. And then you can see the skin easily peels away from the flesh. So I've done my peppers already. I slice it down the middle and remove the seeds and the stem. And like I said, I've started heating, sauteing an onion, and this part was left off of my recipe. I'm gonna get it on there for you. I've already cooked my rice, so I'm going to add the rice to my onion. Let it start heating through. And then I'm gonna season it with some cinnamon, it's good for your blood sugar, and some cloves, ground cloves. Which is really, it's antimicrobial, but these really taste good. If you love cinnamon, you love cloves, you might want more than what's on that recipe. The recipe is just a guide, and do what you like with it. And then the next thing I did, so the other two components of this are a cheese sauce and a salsa. And I forgot to put in my apricots. So I'm gonna have a savory cheese sauce, and then I'm going to have sweet. I have dried apricots, good source of fiber and antioxidants. And I've diced them thin or really small so we can get a little sweet taste in every bite. So that is heating up. And I would make a cheese sauce while that's heating up. So what I did to make the cheese sauce is add some, where's my water? Water to the blender. You add the liquids first so it blends better. It pulls everything into the blade. Then I'm using white beans. Any kind of white beans will do. If you don't eat beans, you can do cashews, but this is a nice high protein, low fat cheese sauce. I've got a little bit of lemon juice, give it that tang of a cheese. Some nutritional yeast, also give it that cheesy flavor. And then I'm using a little bit of salt. And if you've been eating this way for a while and don't use much salt, then use less salt. If you don't use any salt, you can leave it out. And then I would just blend that nice and smooth. So what you want to do is blend it for like 45 to 50 seconds. Make sure it is, the water and the beans are really well combined and smooth. So I've already done that, so you don't have to listen to my blender. Then I'm going to pour some of the cheese sauce in to my rice mixture. This is going to give it moisture and also help it hold together in the pepper. And it also gives it a savory flavor. So we're going to have this cheesy apricot and rice mixture. Smelling really good here, by the way. And the last component is a salsa. And this is a tomatillo salsa. And tomatillos, like tomatoes, are nightshades. And they come in their little papery husk that they grow in. You just peel that off and open it up. It's really, it's a little bit sticky, so you want to wash it off. I would cut these in half and then just put them in the blender. And the other things I've got for my salsa, I have some more onions, that's going to give it some substance. I've got some apple cider vinegar. You can use lemon juice if you like. I have a jalapeno for some heat, and I have removed most of the seeds and the pith because that's the hot part. If you like it really spicy, leave some of that in there. And then I'm using garlic granules because that's more like a cooked flavor. But you should, if you like the bite, you could use fresh garlic. That's good too. And then cilantro. If you don't like cilantro, I mean, people either love it or hate it. So if you don't like it, just leave it out. And then what I did was just pulse it in the blender. So I just turned it on and off, on and off, on and off. And really that's all it took. Other blenders might take a little bit longer, but what you just want a thick and chunky salsa. And that is all I did. Again, I'm putting some salt in my salsa. So I make a lot of salsa and keep it in the fridge. It's really good on tacos. It's good with black beans and rice. It's good with mango and black beans. It's a good salad dressing. So all of these components you can just keep, and then this makes it really easy to put together. All right, so this is heated through. I'm going to now take it off of the heat. So I'm going to add some walnuts, and it's going to add a little crunch into every bite and flavor. And also, walnuts are a good source of omega-3s. It's really heart healthy. It's good for your brain. But the omega-3s, if you heat them out really high, it damages the fat and makes it not so healthy for you. So I'm just going to stir it in after I've heated it. And then I'm just going to take my pepper. And you can see I've cut it down the middle. I'm just going to stuff the pepper. Open it up and fill it up. And if you like to make these ahead of time, if you're going to have a party or something, you can do that and just heat it in the oven for maybe 10 minutes before you serve it. And it's not, the nuts are not going to get hot enough to damage the omega-3s. Then I'm going to top it with some of the salsa. And then I've held back some of the cheese sauce. I'll show you why in just a minute. Okay, so some of the cheese sauce, get it really good. I put in a Ziploc bag. So I've used a glass to be my second set of hands. Just placed a Ziploc bag over it and poured the cheese sauce in there. You could use a piping bag. We're just going to use this as a piping bag, or you can use some kind of squeeze bottle like that. And I just snipped off the little corner of the bag. And we are just going to close the bag. Just going to use it like a piping bag and decorate my pepper with some extra cheese sauce. And you have a really elegant, simple entree. And I hope you'll try it and enjoy it. Thank you for watching. And now we're going to go back. We're going to go to question Q&A. So back to Dilip.
Wow, that was great. Watching all the chefs made me really hungry, and I think people out in Facebook land probably also really enjoyed it. So were there any questions? I know, Ella, you've been watching the Facebook feed. Were there any questions that came in? I saw a few, but let's see if you caught a few.
You're testing me, huh? So the last one actually that came in was about nightshades. Somebody wanted to know what are nightshades, what are the properties that kind of put nightshades in the same family?
This is Cindy. I just answered that question. So nightshades are in the same family. They have 5 petal parts on their flowers, and then they fuse together to form the fruit. And those fruits have seeds in them. So those are the similarities of nightshade families. They also have chemicals or natural phytonutrients in the plants that are similar that people can have issues with sometimes. And that includes tomatoes, potatoes, not the sweet potato, but white potatoes, peppers, and eggplants. So those are the members of the nightshade family.
Does anybody, maybe you, Cindy, have any advice? Are nightshades foods to be enjoyed, to be avoided? Do you have a little bit of history and background on that? You or anybody else?
Well, historically, people thought that all nightshades were poisonous. In fact, tomatoes weren't even consumed until a century or so ago, because, and potatoes, the same thing. Christopher Columbus brought potatoes back from Peru to Europe and they were afraid to eat them. So they're not something that we've eaten for a long time period, historically. But some people do have issues. Most people don't have issues with nightshades. And some people may have issues with one nightshade, but not others. So it's just a matter that you need to check and see how your body responds.
It's funny you said that, Cindy. I used to write a cooking column years and years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And I wrote an article about potatoes. And I learned in researching that article that we think of potatoes as very important in Europe. We know about the Irish potato famine, for example. But it turns out when potatoes were first introduced from South America, people were scared of them and they didn't want to eat them. And at one point, and at that point I did the research. I don't know if it's, at that point it felt like it was true. I think I did the research, but the King of France threatened to cut people's ears off if they wouldn't try potatoes. He was facing hunger issues and people wouldn't eat the potatoes. So.
Is that why potatoes have eyes and not ears?
I know a number of questions came in about peels, about eating peels. And I'll do a quick response, but then maybe Angelita, see what you have to say. Welcome to, by the way, our new Cooks in the Kitchen. Angelita is one of our new ones, and Debbie, who had to leave, is another new one. And by the way, apologies about Denise. I'm sorry about the technology. A question just came in. Denise is going to try to record her segment so that we can see it on Plant-Based Network. She had some great recipes, and I apologize that we couldn't resolve her problems. So peels, generally my view on peels, we try to eat organic. And so generally when we talk about whole food, we mean whole food, and we like to eat the peel and all. Peels often have a lot of good nutrition. I have a good friend, Bob Leroy, who puts on the PPOD, the Plant-Based Prevention of Disease Conference. And he's visited my home quite a few times, and I always pack him with some food to take when he leaves. And I remember he was taking a bus, and he was catching the bus at 11 at night or something like that. And I gave him a bunch of apples, and I said, here's an extra bag, you can keep your compost. He said, what compost? He eats everything, seeds and stem. I know that apples, the seeds have a little bit of, somebody correct me, I think it's arsenic or something, but it's a trivial amount. You'd have to eat bushels and bushels of nothing but seeds for it to be toxic, for it to be a problem. So Angelita, can you share from your, especially some of the heritage foods that you were talking about, the benefit or disadvantage of peel?
Well, I mean, I eat all the peel. Actually, like on the Myers lemons, I'll eat the whole thing except for the seed. Oranges, limes, grapefruit, I eat it all. Mangoes also, I eat the peel on the mango. I just make sure I wash them really well. With the dried peppers, when you reconstitute them and you put them in the blender, then you want to run those through a sieve. You don't want to eat that peel on the dried chilies. But other than that, I mean, I eat the peel on the potatoes. I don't ever take that off. I think it has extra nutrients. I don't know. Before I became plant-based or vegan, I used to trade out with my children. They would eat the inside of the potato and I would eat the outside of the potato, which worked really good for them. So turnips, I eat the peel. Also cucumbers, we eat the peel of that as well. The way I grew up in the Hispanic community. And then cactus, we just took off the little thorns on them and we just diced those up and we would eat the rest of the peel. So I've not ever had an issue with peels that are kind of thin. Of course, needless to say, anything that's like really, really thick, I wouldn't suggest, but thin-skinned vegetables, I think, are fine.
Mark, I know in earlier shows you've talked about your Eastern European heritage. Can you also talk about peels from, back home when your ancestors, I don't know how many generations ago?
Well, a couple of generations actually. So I would be the second generation. immigrants. My family, both my parents immigrated from Slovenia. And, you know, I think what was a larger influence on them was the Great Depression. And growing up and moving to Chicago during the Great Depression. So, you know, potatoes were a staple. Unfortunately, organ meats were a really big staple too, but, you know, they ate everything. It's really interesting as I'm listening to people talk about peels. I happen to have some cucumbers. Somebody was talking about cucumbers. I think John was talking about cucumbers and tomatoes, or maybe it was Susanna was talking about cucumbers and tomatoes from the garden. And you know, our cucumbers from our garden, you know, they don't have any wax on them. I think a lot of people, when you grab cucumbers or apples, they'll be really shiny. They look good. You know, I think there's some preservative properties, but the you know, retailers will coat it with wax, and I'm not sure how well you can get that wax off. Maybe I suspect if you wash it really, really well. But I have found, though, that the quality, even if they're washed and try to eat the peels on cucumbers, for example, are just nothing like stuff that's fresh from the garden. I'm also really interested in the fact, I was thinking about this with respect to peels and just the freshness of vegetables in general. And my wife and I, just about a year ago, September, we were in Ireland and cooked quite a bit. We rented a house for 1 week in the Barrens, which is on the west coast of Ireland. And we had rutabagas. And the rutabagas that we get here were so different tasting than the rutabagas in Ireland. The rutabagas in Ireland that we had, I just mashed them up a little bit of salt and pepper, and they were so buttery. And I don't know if it was the species, if it was the fact that they weren't sitting on a tankard from, you know, coming from South America for, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks. But I think, you know, we try to preserve vegetables with, you know, waxes and all those types of things. And I think we end up leaching out and removing a lot of the flavor and the vitamins and all the nutrients and everything. So I would just be careful with the waxes. If it's really waxy, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know if anybody else has any insight how to get that wax off of the outside of vegetables as well.
One thing I didn't want to overemphasize the point is in my family, we try to buy all organic, and so the peels are less of an issue. And I want to be clear that in our classes, and maybe one of us, maybe in a minute, Carolyn, you can tell us what Food for Life is, but maybe in our classes, we really emphasize the strong evidence base behind all the benefits of going whole food plant-based. Organic is something different, and so at some point maybe we can have a program and talk about it. I think there are some benefits, but we don't want to provide too many challenges. If you eat more plants, go whole food plant-based, that's awesome. And then maybe a future step. Sometimes people find organic can be expensive, for example, and that too we could have a discussion on at some point. But I didn't want to overemphasize the organic point. Don't feel that, hey, these guys are talking about organic produce and I just can't afford it. So come aboard the plant-based bandwagon, whether or not you're eating organic is what I would say. And anybody else wants to?
I agree with you, Dilip. I mean, my husband is a physician, and he tells his patients basically eat the healthiest food you can afford, but by far, even conventionally raised fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans are going to be better for you than the meat and dairy and eggs that you're replacing them with. So even conventionally raised, you know, but if you can afford organic, if you want to eat organic, and there are certain things that you probably should try to eat organic. If you go to the Environmental Working Group, EWF.org, and you look up the Dirty Dozen, they put out every year, the Environmental Working Group puts out a list of the 12 most heavily pesticide sprayed or polluted fruits and vegetables we have. And invariably, you'll find strawberries and apples and spinach on that list. They pretty much make the top 12 every year. So there are certain things that I try really hard not to eat unless they are organic because of the heavy amount of pesticides that we find on them, specifically strawberries, because the outer skin of the strawberry is so porous. And so the pesticides would definitely sink into that. Apples, I mean, they have a little harder surface to them, but it can definitely sink into the apple as well. Spinach, definitely, because it has it's a very porous leaf. And so you want to try to eat that organic if you can. Certain things I wouldn't think matter, like most people, and Helita, I'm sorry, but most people wouldn't eat the peels of an orange. So, I know what you do, but that's fine. But I mean, but if it's a banana, most people don't eat that. However, I have interestingly seen a recipe recently for banana peel bacon, so I'm going to take a look at that. But I would try and get those organic then if I'm going to make bacon out of it, which I'm fascinated by. But somebody said to me several years ago, I think eating organic is so expensive. And we know that pesticides are tied to higher incidences of cancer. And so I think organic foods may be expensive, but they are cheaper than chemotherapy.
Amen. Also, I wanted to say that, people should try growing their own fruits and vegetables. You can do container growing as well. Just a little plot of land. I mean, it's just a tiny little amount is good enough for you to grow 2-3 tomato plants and some green beans and, herbs. So try looking into that one as well.
Carolyn, can you take a moment and tell us what is Food for Life? That's what joins us together. We're all Food for Life instructors. And
we
so
are
if people
all
want
Food for Life. Yes, so Food for Life is a program that is sponsored by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which has been around for 35 years and was started by Dr. Neil Bernard. And the Physicians Committee focuses on what are the most healthy foods that humans can eat and what is scientifically backed up. So we have a lot of research studies that, Physicians Committee sponsors research studies and is also very involved in research studies with other institutes like Harvard and Yale and the CDC and the National Institutes of Health. And so every year Physicians Committee puts on also, it was just last week or the week before, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. And so because they got so many questions as the Physicians Committee about, well, what do we eat? What do you have recipes? How do we do this? And how do we implement this in our own lives and in our own communities? They started the program of Food for Life to have people like us who live in all over the country and all over the world. We have instructors in Germany, in England, in Canada, in Italy, in Brazil. We have instructors everywhere. I think there's about 325 of us now around the world. We all have specific training through Physicians Committee on how to teach classes like this one, but in our own communities. So we go through training in Washington, D.C., where we come together and meet, but we also have continuing education that we get online. And because of the pandemic and none of us could teach in our own communities anymore, Dilip's great idea, I thought, was to come together and teach online and do this as a group. So this has been a really fun thing for Food for Life instructors to do, to bring us together. And some of us haven't met in person, some of us have. We were maybe in different classes. And so I was the class of 2015, I think. And we have, a lot of us were trained more recently and some people even longer ago. And so, it's kind of a cool way for us to get to know each other too, just teaching this kind of online class.
Yeah, one thing, this is one community that I feel extremely comfortable recommending. If I have a friend in, say, Evansville, Indiana, I've never been lucky enough to meet Susanna. I mean, now I know you because of the So Many Cooks in the Kitchen, but if I didn't, I can, without hesitation, recommend any Food for Life instructor, because anytime I can't answer a question, I know I have a colleague of sisters and brothers who know at least as much as I do and who, can share kitchen tips and know about nutrition. So I always feel so privileged to be part of this group. Food for Life's great. There was a question I wanted to kind of give Ella a heads up. So in a minute, Ella, maybe you can tell us about So Many Kids in the Kitchen and what that is. But before we do that, several people were talking about fruits in our presentation. I think, for example, I included apricots in my quinoa. And I can't remember who it was, but there was a question early on about peaches. And somebody asked, can we substitute fruit? And at that point, I responded on Facebook. I said, let's ask. And I can't remember who it was that was being cooking.
I remember. So
yeah,
there was the question was for Carolyn, in her dish, it had peaches. The question was, could you use different fruits other than peaches?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I meant to mention that if you don't have peaches, they aren't in season. If you can find nectarines, that would be great. I think it is kind of a summer, actually at home, we call it the summer farro salad. But I think you could in the winter time really make it an interesting dish to serve it warm. And instead of the peaches, you could throw in apples and walnuts instead of the almonds. And change it up a little bit. Instead of the lemon juice, maybe use balsamic vinegar. So you could actually make it a warm winter salad, maybe throw in some roasted broccoli and cauliflower, instead of the peaches and the tomatoes, and just change the flavor profile, but use sort of the same basic recipe, cooked farro, and then throw in other things. One of our favorite things we eat in the winter, actually, is what we just call winter farro pilaf. And it's a tray of roasted vegetables, cooked farro, some walnuts, and just drizzle it with balsamic vinegar. And it's almost the same thing. You just changed all the ingredients, but you're serving it warm. So definitely play with your food.
I wanted to throw something out is a lot of times some people feel a little uncomfortable in the kitchen and maybe they need to follow recipes, and that's great. There are lots of recipe books, but at least me, and I suspect all of us, I use recipes when I look at them as a starting point. I prefer to create recipes. And I realize that, I'm bad at many things. There's a lot of things I do very poorly, but I think I have a good sense of what ingredients go well together. But even if you don't, take a recipe as a starting point, even if you're not ready to create your own recipes. And if the recipe calls for a pinch of salt, say, I want to reduce my sodium, no salt. Or maybe the recipe calls for some black pepper, and you might say, I like it hot. Forget the black pepper, let's put some jalapeno. So I like looking at recipes or cooking as a blank slate. You have this plate and you want to create something that's beautiful and that's tasty. And so if a recipe calls for peaches and you don't like peaches, you like mangoes, throw a mango and treat it kind of the same way. Ella, can you tell us about, and by the way, there was a question that just came in about cookbook. When are we going to compile a cookbook? So some of us have contacts in the publishing industry, and again, I apologize to Denise. We couldn't include her segment today, but hopefully it will be included, recorded. She's been compiling these recipes, and each of these sessions of Cooks in the Kitchen, we do have, and the Kids in the Kitchen, we do have the recipes, and we all think it's a great idea. So any of you who want to help us publish it, we're going to keep generating content, and at some point we will reach out, I think, to some of our contacts in the publishing world and see if there's interest. So Ella, can you tell us about So Many Kids in the Kitchen?
Of course. So So Many Kids in the Kitchen was this idea that it would be awesome to try to have the children of some of the Food for Life instructors that are old enough to be in the kitchen, to have them do some live cooking shows in the hopes of inspiring other children and other families out there to get together in the kitchen and cook. So right now we have 3 Food for Life instructors. It's Cody, Dilip, and myself, and our children did a couple of shows. We did 5 shows, 3 published and 2 just like a test show for the kids to get accustomed. And it was amazing to see how much they wanted to learn. If they made a recipe with broccoli, they wanted to research more about it, so they have something to say about it. So it was great experience for the children to really be in front of the computer, be in front of the camera, answer questions just the same way we're doing it right now. So you can find that right here on this page, correct? And there's So Many Cooks in the Kitchen.
Yeah, you can find it on our Facebook page. Also, you can go to somanycooks.com and you'll find there's a whole section just for kids. So it's been really fun. I don't know about you, Ella, but I learned from my daughter, and I think that I was able to present. I learned some ways that she presented. She's much slower and she takes her time, and I sometimes talk really, really fast and go on. So I'm trying to slow down and learn from my daughter.
Same here.
Did Jen, I know you were watching the questions on Facebook as well as Ella. Did you see any new questions that came in?
There were just a few little questions during Cindy's. They were intrigued by your yogurt and making your own yogurt. That was a big thing on there. And your tortilla and frying the tortilla chips with Angelina. She wanted to know how long. I think that got answered, but for those people that had that question, how long you fried them in the air fryer?
I put them in the air fryer at 400 for about 4 minutes, and then just toss them. I don't know which type of air fryer they have. I have the Ninja Foodie. So to me, I think it heats up a lot faster. I mean, I'm not sure, but 4 to 5 minutes and you should be fine. Any leftovers, just let them cool down completely and just put them in a Ziploc bag and they'll hold. I mean, they're good for probably a week.
Great. And those people that don't have an air fryer, you can do them in the oven too. I put my oven on 400 and just maybe 5 minutes or so. I just keep checking them so they don't burn. So yeah, they're great. And that way you can make your own and avoid all that added oil. Awesome.
Yeah, and you can also season them. You can spray them before you put them in there with just a little vegetable broth or aquafaba and then your favorite seasoning.
Nice.
And then just put them in there and then you'll have some flavored ones as well.
Awesome. Great.
Cindy, did you want to talk about your yogurt? I might throw something in about my yogurt too after you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I shared the link for making the yogurt. You can also search Trimazing yogurt and it should come up with the post about that. But I make my yogurt with soy milk, and you can use commercially made soy milk or soy milk that you make yourself from soybeans. You just want to make sure that if you are using commercial soy milk that it doesn't have anything except soybeans and water, because those extra additives like oil and sugar and flavorings prevent the yogurt from really forming. And then I make it in my Instant Pot, but I also have instructions on how to make it in a crock pot or your oven or just, you know, in a warm spot in your house. Or a food dehydrator is also a great incubator for making yogurt. And you can use either some existing yogurt, so commercially plant-based yogurt, or probiotic capsules. You empty out a few of those into the soy milk and mix it up and put it in the warm place. And oh gosh, takes about 10 or 12, 14 hours, and it will turn into yummy yogurt. And so I use the yogurt I make to seed the next batch of yogurt. One of the things that I missed was a thick Greek style yogurt. So when I make my own yogurt, it tends to be a lot looser and runnier than I want. And so I simply line a sieve with a thin towel and I put that yogurt in and I put that over a bowl or a sink and let that set for like an hour or so. And the whey, that's the dairy or the soy milk whey, will drip out and you're left with a nice thick yogurt. It's more like a Greek yogurt. So that's kind of one of my tips for making your own yogurt.
Yeah, and I agree with everything Cindy said. I have exactly the same experience, and I have a website that describes it. It's on my blog, and it's bit.ly/vegan yogurt, all lowercase except the Y, so it's bicapitalized. So bit.ly/vegan capital Y OGURT. And I did a number of experiments with soy, with almond milk, with I think I tried hemp milk. And I didn't get good results with anything but the soy. My wife has problems digesting soy, so we were trying with almond and it didn't come out as well. And I've had exactly the same experience. I make my own soy milk. It's easy and it's cheap. You can buy a big 25-pound bag of soybeans for like $25, $30, and that's enough, makes enough milk for almost a year. Mm-hmm. So it's like pennies to drink soy milk. But I found that my own homemade soy milk didn't give me, it gave me too runny yogurt. And so I do buy soy milk really just for my yogurt. And what I buy is, just like Cindy said, it needs to have only soybeans and water. And so the brands that I buy are either Eden Soy or West Soy. And I've heard Trader Joe's makes one as well, but it shouldn't have even vanilla or anything else. It should only have soybeans and water. And those are two brands I like to use. And I found that I can get it reasonably thick when I buy the store-bought milk. But if I really want it even thicker, then I can sometimes put it through cheesecloth or something like that. One thing I did this week is I was doing some air frying as well, and I wanted my spices to stick. And so I said, how about yogurt? I can't remember what I was cooking. It was some vegetable. Sorry?
Potatoes.
Potatoes. You have a good memory. Thanks, Ella. So even though she isn't, I wish she were my neighbor. But, That's right. And I chop my potatoes and then I dredge them in vegan yogurt. Okay, we're all vegans, so vegan yogurt. And then first I put some vegan yogurt, I dipped in yogurt, then I dredged it in some spices and I air fried it and it was really good. My whole family really quite liked it. There was, speaking of dredging, one thing I used was nutritional yeast, and a question came in I don't have the answer for. Kathleen Koch, I think, and I apologize, Kathleen, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. It might be Koch or Coach. Kathleen Koch, K-O-C-H, asked about nutritional yeast. And I had commented that often nutritional yeast is supplemented with vitamin B12. And she said that when she finds the unsupplemented nutritional yeast, it tastes a lot better. And this is something I don't know anything about. Hopefully one of the rest of you can contribute about unfortified nutritional yeast and how it tastes. Anybody have any knowledge about that?
It tastes less like vitamins. And it is usually fortified with synthetic vitamins. And that makes your liver, gallbladder work a little bit harder. So I do prefer the non-fortified.
Okay. So non-fortified is the only thing, I guess the only thing missing would be the B12.
B vitamins, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So it might be worth talking for a moment about B12. Once in a while, people say, hey, what you guys are saying really makes sense. I keep hearing it in the news. So many people are saying plant-based is important. But here's our counter argument. How about those B vitamins? Don't I have to keep eating animals to get B? And I'll let somebody else answer, but I will say that getting B12 is critical. It's important for brain function. So get enough B12, no matter what your diet is, especially when you're 50, no matter what your diet is, take a supplement. This is the only supplement that that my family uses. We use vitamin D as well. But can somebody talk about B12 and some of the issues around B12? Maybe somebody who hasn't, Karen, you haven't contributed recently. Can you share a little bit? Oh no, you did. How about Susanna?
Well, what I know is that you're right, B12 is very essential to our nervous system, and cows typically get it from the plants that they're eating. So it's not necessarily that you have to eat meat to get B12, it's you're getting it secondhand. So supplementing, because we are not getting that B12 from the cows as they eat the grass, it's very important for our central nervous system to get B12. So as you said, Dilip, you know, my family, I get these vegan chewable, they're cherry flavored, and, you know, making sure every couple of days, it's like, okay, everybody take their B so that we are getting that essential vitamin. But you, again, you don't need to eat meat. We're just kind of bypassing the animal and we're getting it, you know, from our supplements.
There's actually a lot of studies now about, because it's a microorganism that's in the soil that the cow is pulling up and eating. And our soil is getting very depleted on this earth from over farming and chemicals. And so they're really recommending everyone needs a B12 supplement in their life, because even meat eaters, the cow isn't absorbing as much B12. It's just not there as much as it used to be. So
in fact, the cows are being injected with B12. And all the farmed animals are being injected because they're not getting enough either.
And we need so small quantities. We need 12 micrograms a day. So it's a small quantity and the body metabolizes it, stores it for a long time. So it's important to get. There's so many easy sources, so many great vegan sources. We use a spray, you can take a tablet. Just a quick word on this is if you're interested in supplementation, there are a lot of people in the plant-based community who kind of say, eat food, eat good food. And the best example I'd give would be Colin Campbell, T. Colin Campbell. He wrote the China study and he has a book that I really like called Whole, W-H-O-L-E. And he strongly argues against supplementation. He said, Mother Nature didn't create food for us to take as pills. So eat good food. But the exception really is B12. And our food is just so purified nowadays, we're not getting B12 like we used to in the natural state. And that's why that's something we need to supplement. And in terms of D, it's because of many of us just aren't getting out in the sun as much as we should.
So Dilip, let me point out too, that there have been very recent studies just coming out, some out of Northern Europe, that are looking at the fact that we can get too much B12 and it can be damaging. And so people who take, and so people who take, this is very evolving information right now. This is super new information, but I think Michael Greger has some things on it on nutritionfacts.org, but it looks like we probably need about 24 micrograms of B12 a day, and really not much more than that. B12 is super important for your nerve health. So tingling fingers and toes, not from carpal tunnel syndrome, but like when you get tingling fingers and toes when it's really cold out, that kind of thing might be a B12 deficiency. But you only need about 24 micrograms a day. And it has previously been thought that B12, because it is considered water soluble and not fat soluble, that you would just pee it out. But it turns out too much, maybe a little too much. So go with 24 micrograms a day. In fact, Neil Bernard mentioned it at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine just last week. He did talk about that. So but it's evolving information, and it looks like some new studies coming out of Northern Europe that are saying too much.
Foods are fortified with it as well. So you may be getting enough from your store-bought soy or almond milk.
Right. It's a good thing to have that checked. Like if you go to the doctor and you're getting blood work done, just get them to check your B12 and D. And if you're in the normal ranges, then keep doing what you're doing. If you're not getting enough, maybe consider adding a B12. Look at how much it has in it. Some of those supplements have like 5,000 micrograms. You don't need that much. And if you're taking a 5,000 microgram, maybe consider taking it once every few weeks, but you definitely don't need that every single day.
And obviously take advice from your healthcare provider before making any big changes in your diet and in terms of getting advice for things like this. We just posted a wonderful link to Michael Greger, and I'm wondering if one of you could talk for a moment about who he is and about nutrition facts. I'm going to run to my kitchen and help answer the question. I'll show you what brand of B12 we use. So if one of you can talk with Michael Greger, I'll be back in a second.
Michael Greger is a really amazing doctor who is one of the founders of the Academy of Lifestyle Medicine, and he's an MD who became an MD because his grandmother was dying when he was very young of heart disease, and she totally changed her diet to plant-based and lived long enough to see him graduate from medical school and to meet her grandchildren. So she had been given a very early death sentence when he was a child and lived long enough. So he became a doctor. He founded the nutritionfacts.org. He's written the book, How Not to Die, How Not to Diet. He's totally nonprofit. And if you go on his website, watch videos about Michael Greger, I mean, the videos Michael Greger does, it's not just him. He's a team of about 30 people now, but everything is nonprofit. There's no ads. He's not trying to sell anything. So highly recommend his website and How Not to Die. Excellent book.
The brand.
He reads every medical journal.
Yes. Well, he and his team of 30 people. But yeah.
We're really lucky because hopefully, keep our fingers crossed, next month in our tofu one, we have a brand new cook in the kitchen. She's from Brazil, and she is one of the volunteers who works with Michael Greger. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot from her and having the Brazilian flair. There's lots of B12s available. I like this from Pure Vegan. I showed it a moment ago. It's a spray, and it's vegan certified. I like the company Pure Vegan. And I also wanted to jump on that topic that nutrition information is changing frequently. I take solace in knowing that there's so many people who are advocating plant-based eating. Neil Barnard, Caldwell Esselstyn, Brenda Davis. Brenda is coming out with a new book I'm really excited about children with a pediatrician. And I actually interviewed the pediatrician. If you go to our Facebook page, you can see it. There's so many people. There's some honest differences of opinion. The evidence shows slightly different things in terms of how much fat, how important is sodium, things like that. But there's overwhelming evidence that plant-based is important. And yeah, you'll occasionally see a study someplace where somebody says, we found some benefits of, say, eating meat. But there are not many such studies, and they don't have a lot of references. So check out the references, check out who's funding these studies, and you'll find moving towards a plant-based diet is a great way to go. And in terms of evidence, check out pcrm.org. We have a lot of good resources. And Michael Greger is great because if you see something, Michael will scour the literature and he'll say, here's something, and here's the references. So when you go to see your physician, point him to these references. Mark, maybe you can share, how do you look for a plant-based physician, or how do you get information out to your healthcare providers about the benefits of plant-based eating? Because most doctors don't get this in medical school.
They don't, yeah. So PCRM actually, excuse me, on their website, pcrm.org, you could search for plant-based doctors in your area by zip code or by city or by state. So they continue to expand, continues to grow. The other really interesting thing that we're here in Chicago really excited about is that PCRM does do telemedicine, does visits with plant-based doctors by telemedicine. So recently, I mean, really within this last month, Chicago now, residents in Chicago are eligible to be able to have virtual visits with physicians, and they continue to grow. So something with the licensing by state, again, if you go on pcrm.org, you'll be able to find various states that where you live, and if you could see one of those virtual physicians. So we're really excited about that option. The other thing is, if Chicago, unfortunately, though it's a big city, there's not a lot of plant-based physicians. We are just so fortunate to have one of the world-renowned cardiologists here in Chicago, Dr. Kim Williams, who's also the chair of cardiology at Rush University Medical Center. My wife sees him, and he's a wonderful guy. He talks about cardiologists, and that there's two types of cardiologists: those cardiologists that are vegan, and those cardiologists that haven't read the literature about being vegan. And so, but if you can't find a physician that's a plant-based physician, I was able to find a physician that's an osteopath, and especially primary care doctors. I've spent 15 years in the medical field prior to becoming Food for Life instructor and using this as my encore career. But especially family practice medicine or primary care doctors, they're about relationship with people. And I was able to find a doctor that is an osteopathic doctor, and she listened as I continued to bring literature into her and talked with her and develop my relationship with her. Very user-friendly physician. Find those types of physicians, and then look at the web, look on the web, and go to pcrm.org and present that literature to your physician. I even sent my physician links to the recent medical conference that folks were referencing. She attended it virtually, and over the last 2 years now that she's been my physician, she's seen all my numbers, my weight go down, my blood pressure normal, my cholesterol dropped to the lowest that it's ever been, all without medicine. And between the research that you share with your doctor and then show your physician how your health has improved as a result to it, a good physician, an open physician is gonna listen and want to be educated. And who knows, you may end up helping other people through that relationship and through educating your physician, because doctors are like all of us, they want to learn, and good physicians want to be open and support their patients.
There's a website, I think it's called plantbaseddocs.com. I think it's something like that, and you can look up plant-based doctors. We also, Physicians Committee has developed curricula, both for medical school and postgraduate education, that's available for free. So if you're watching and you're associated with a medical school, we can share some resources. We also have resource guides for hospitals. And I helped make a film called Code Blue, which talks about the problems that we just don't, in medical school, doctors don't learn that much about nutrition. It's not their fault, but perhaps we should learn more about nutrition if we're training to become a doctor. Are there any last minute questions? There have been so many good questions.
Philip?
Yes.
Oh, there was a question about the chewable B12, and I put the name in. It's just a brand from Integrative Therapeutics, and it is a B12 active chewable. It's great if you have children because it tastes like cherry, and it has no animal products, no soy, no let me see, where does it say that? So it doesn't have any salt, wheat, gluten, soy, dairy products, ingredients of any animal origins or artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. So it's like I said, it's great because a child can chew it up, or just, it'll dissolve in your mouth really quickly. So,
and maybe you can post a link to it, Susanna, on our Facebook page as well. And just a quick clarification, there's nothing, we actually strongly recommend soy, and that's a intro I'm going to ask Cindy to make in a moment to our next show. Soy is a very healthful food. Some people have allergic problems, and that's why what you mentioned, Susanna, what Susanna mentioned, many of them are common allergens. So it's not, get a takeaway that let's avoid soy. Absolutely not. If you, as long as you don't have an allergy, soy is very protective for many things. If you think about in Japan and China, where there's a high rate of soy consumption, cancer rates and other disease rates were until relatively recently pretty low. Cindy, can you talk just for a moment about what we're doing next month?
Yes, so next month we're finished with the power plate. We started with beans and went through vegetables, fruits, and grains.
And whose idea was it to do the power plate?
Oh, that was my mom. She was so excited that we were going to do a trip around the power plate. So that shout out to my mom who watched today. And I know she's from Louisiana. And so she was so excited to see the red beans and rice recipe. So thank you for sharing that for my mom. So we had brainstormed lots of ideas of what we wanted to present after the power plate. We've gotten some fantastic recommendations and comments and requests from our viewers. And the thing that has been a common thread from what people really want to learn how to use is tofu. So we're going to have a show dedicated to tofu, all the different ways you can use it, from savory to sweet, from firm to soft, and everything in between. So we'll have, and I'm so excited, we've been listing out the things that all of us want to present. And I'm super excited because I'm going to learn some fantastic things. So that program is not scheduled yet. It's not on our events, but it's slated to occur on September 26th. Yes.
That sounds right.
And we don't have a time yet, but as soon as we've got that figured out, making sure that we can get as many Food for Life instructors involved at whatever time that we find works for all of us, we will have that posted on our Facebook page with the event link, so you can like it and share it with your friends and view us when we talk about how we're going to use tofu.
And Ella, did you want to take a quick moment and tell us what our plans are for so many kids in the kitchen and what the ages are of the kids?
Yes, so ages, we go, I guess the show is meant for anybody, any kid that can actually be in the kitchen and help out and make something. So my son is 8, and we have as young as a 4-year-old who's participating and is one of the so many chefs, so many kids in the kitchen. But it's really meant for elementary, upper elementary, middle grades students, and their families, just to kind of see and get ideas of what kids can actually do independently in the kitchen. If they're younger, of course, they're gonna need a little bit of help. And we are planning the next show, correct me if I'm wrong, Dilip, somewhere later in October.
I think we were talking about early October.
Yes, so stay tuned. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for a kids show or recipes, let us know.
By the way, an interesting question came in. Will you teach us how to make or use tempeh? Cindy already did that. She has an awesome tempeh recipe. I'm sure it's on her site. We've talked about having a show about making foods like tofu and tempeh, and we might do that. My thought is to wait, because that's a really restricted audience. I don't think many people are going to jump into the kitchen and cook tempeh from scratch or tofu. So Cindy.
I have something really exciting to share on that front. So in September, I'm participating in Bellingham Veg Fest. So Bellingham is a city north of Seattle, and they asked me to teach a class online with the Veg Fest on making tempeh. So I will post the link to Bellingham Veg Fest. I'll have an hour-long show on how to make tempeh. Cool. Good timing for that question.
Yeah, so in terms of the September show, we're not, will you include tempeh? Probably not. We're thinking of a separate show just for tempeh. So right now the idea is tofu. Some people, for example, my wife can't eat tofu, it bothers her stomach, but she can eat tempeh. And so we're going to have a different show on tempeh down the road at some point. So with that, we have, this has been a fairly long show, and we appreciate all of you who've joined us and stuck with us. Feel free to keep asking questions on Facebook. Before we bring it to a close, any of the other instructors have a final comment or anything?
Thank you for watching us and for your patience.
Watch for us on Plant-Based Network. I don't remember the URL off the top of my head, but once we're live and once we're published on Plant-Based Network, we'll definitely let you guys know on our Facebook page and on our website, which is so-many-cooks.com. So thanks everybody for joining us. See you soon. Keep an eye on our Facebook page. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.